Disclaimer. The information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GAN's processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
Okay, and now we want to welcome Alex for a very special teaching. I've put what Elias shared with us, all these different articles in the Plasma Times and so on about the carbon-14, the gift for man to stop the killing, the pathway, the free engine, the free energy resources for the structure, carbon-14, plasmatic calculus, and a highway to travel the universe. And of course, that was the part I was going to play. If we have time, maybe we'll continue about the enhancement unit. This is all we do, is they just open up your reduce your magnetic fields, and you get on the highway right away without any training, without having to know if you had to convert something to something else. Number 4, a key to the creation of bus stops, portals of the superhighway of the universe, Plasma Times in April. Carbon-14, rotation without motors. Carbon-14, balance connection, a lock between physicality and soul. Carbon-14 again, a foreign creator of the structure of the man, Plasma Times. Magrev, the converter of carbon-14. So again, these articles are available for you to read, understand, ask your soul to explain it. I think the soul is connecting with it every day, and we are too when we daydream or when we night dream. This is the highway that we get on. So thank you, Alex, for coming in and providing us always a beautiful presentation every week. Even though I don't always understand all of it, I try to take what I can from it and to bring it into my structure that I understand more. So thank you for sharing your understanding of this plasma technology, again, which is seemingly endless. We see your screen.
And good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Mark, for all your efforts in carrying the ball here. This is a very important meeting, and it's not just a North American crew here. We have people on the panel from all around the world, and so it becomes a very important session. So I want to thank everybody for that. We are in the business of teaching more to enhance, shall we say, or broaden the knowledge as put forward by Meredith Kolikesh. And this has to do with the plasma science. And at this time, it's never been more important in the history of man, because the history of man is going to be rewritten. This is the Kesh Foundation Spaceship Institute, Teachings in Plasma Science. We are at the advanced inner space level. We're going to introduce the emotion of knowledge. My name is Alexander. I'm from Canada. It is March 12th, 2023. This is the Kesh Foundation North America Plasma Education Series. And so we have looked at the basic series, intermediate series, and advanced series. And so we say we're in the advanced inner space series, and you see the progress that we're trying to make. And today, with the emotion of knowledge, the obvious question is, what is the difference between the emotion of knowledge and the advanced knowing series where we did the knowing by connection? And so a lot had to do with the point of view with respect to the physicality or with respect to the plasma reality. And so with the emotion of knowledge, we find that there are two aspects that we want to cover. One is that it's an emotion, and two is that it's knowledge, because there's things that are affecting us that we're not exactly taking into account. So for instance, when we look at the three books, we have the Universal Order of Creation of Matters, which is the source, and book number 3, The Origin of the Universe, which represents our souls. And then there's a link to book number 2, The Structure of Light. All of this has to do with our search for outer space. And in this search, we always seem to come to planet Earth because that's our sentimental pie in the sky. And as with all pies, it's part of the bigger pie. And in fact, this pie is so immense that we have difficulty comprehending it. And as a result, maybe we don't want to comprehend it. And so we have to understand what it means exactly, because too many of us are going through life and not asking the questions. Because really, the creation of matters is a feeding system, and our soul is the feedback to this. And it requires, in order to be existent, it requires a gravitational stability. And so if we say gravitational stability, then that means the soul is gravitational. And so the energy that is feeding us is magnetical. And so our search for outer space has to be a search for that stable pie in the sky. And wherever that pie is stable, we could call that home. And if it's not stable, well, it's a place that we don't want to go. And so we have to determine how we know that. And if you think that we are so intelligent, look at the planet positioning. They have already positioned themselves in their specific location. And we see this, and we say that seeing is believing. But do we actually know what we're seeing? And then do we see it? And so this becomes a matter of interpretation. But the fact of the matter is that there's some kind of position that's been determined, and this is done through an emotional context as well. But this pie is only a small portion of the pie of the solar system. So when we look at the rest of the orbits that each planet goes through, the part that we don't take into account, that literally is a sea of emotion. And so the planets are immersed in this sea of emotion, and this sea of emotion is the emotion of knowledge. And so likewise, we're immersed in this sea as well. So this sea water is washing over us all the time, whether we acknowledge it or not. And so one of the limitations, of course, has been our reference to measuring the distance in the what we call space by measuring it in light years. But we find that the light years are determined by the speed of light. And so when we look at the different distances, they all fail in terms of the reference, because we can see that we can do things much faster than light years. And so how is that possible? And so we're trying to transcend the limitations of nuclear science, because this is very important. If you want to increase the energy, you have to increase the speed. And if you increase the energy, you have to increase the mass. So both sides to remain constant, you have to increase. If you want more energy or less energy, you have to decrease. But you can't do one on one side and the opposite on the other side. Both have to be the same. So you increase the speed, you increase the energy. So in these equations, there is no factor that determines the speed or in fact demonstrates any change in the energy. And this becomes very important because, we're talking about our position on Earth space, and our position is the man space. But prior to that, we have an inner space, and not only an inner space of man space, but there's an inner space of the Earth space as well. And all of this is bound to the ethos of the universe, which involves morality, compassion, and courage. And these are the foundational emotions that are the basis of creation. So creation is a positive thing, and it's governed by the ethos of the universe. So what's our problem? And when we question this, what we have to question is, what's our problem? That's what we have to question, because the proof of concept is that we had a preference and sentimentality for the Earth, and we chose to be born. And we were born by choosing an outer space system. And so we were born into the inner space of this environment, which includes the planet Earth, and it includes our man space. And so is this just halfway on this trip? Or is this the target point? Is this the destination? Well, obviously not, because a lot of us are still coming and a lot of us are still going. But wherever we're going, we're not going in outer space, because everything that we see in what we have called outer space has been a fallacy, because we can see the sun space and we can see the planet spaces. We even allocate the moon space as a space, although it's part of the planet space, isn't it? And then what about the spaces in between? Those are all in between spaces and we can see them. So none of these things are outer space. And yet we want to conquer this. So we can't conquer it if we don't have the understanding. And so we will see a difference with the flight tests coming up that take us to the moon. And so that's coming within several weeks here, to have the proof of concept with respect to the transmutation capabilities of the geoplasma technology. And why would that be so strange? Because let's face it, before we got here, the Earth was here. And so the Earth had this magnetical peace dome, and it has this core, the soul of the Earth being in the core. And we tried to figure out, in order to maintain this gravitational stability, there has to be a rotation. But we don't rotate. And so we found that the way to resolve this anomaly is to look at the cell structure, and we find that as the cells get together, they have magnetical gravitational respect with respect to their energy states. And as such, they impart a gravitational stability, just like the Earth does. And so that's a pretty good thing. But do the cells rotate? Do they have to rotate? What they have to do is they have to have gravitational stability. And so when we ask this question, we have to understand, are we asking with respect to the physicality, or are we asking with respect to the plasma reality? Because in order to maintain this plasma field, there has to be a rotation, and the rotation contributes to the gravitational stability. So whether or not it physically rotates has to do with other factors, has to do with the environment, has to do with the relationships. So what we're focusing on right now is the stability of the gravitational aspect. And so the gravitational aspect applies to the plasma reality. And so we found that the key component of the plasma reality, because we can't touch it or feel it in terms of physicality, but we can certainly touch it or feel it in terms of emotions. And so we call that the emotion of man. But the emotion of man also has a physical aspect to it, doesn't it? And that's the difference between, say, love and lust. And so it also has a plasmatic aspect to it. And so that would be the love. And as a result of these emotions, we have a presence. And within that presence, we had to choose a position. And from that position, we have a vision and an interpretation of the vision. But there's a predecessor, and that's the emotion of knowledge. And we talk about that today because somehow, some way, everything that we have is really a feedback system. What we need to identify is the feeding system. And so the emotion of knowledge defaults to that position. So we see that when we talked about the relationship where 1 and 1 is more than 2, we find that the one and the other one are not necessarily the same one. We just, assume that some things are equal in that regard, but we have to see that there are different feeding dimensions. And as a result, if we have these 2 feeding dimensions, then we have a product, and that becomes the feedback dimension. And when we view this, we find that in order to view this and be the observer, we're none of those 3 dimensions. So we're in a 4th dimension. Are the feeding dimensions and the feedback dimensions the same dimensions in all cases? And as an observer, our relationship to these dimensions, being a 4th dimension, is that the same 4th dimension also in all of these cases? So the point being is that you have to have feeding and feedback dimensions. And then from that point, you have an observational dimension. So in order to be the observer, you have to have this gravitational stability. But you cannot exist if you don't have this stability. So to maintain this stability, this feeding has to be an ongoing process. And as such, to understand how that works effectively, you have to have a feedback process at the same time. So you actually become the intermediary. And so we find that all of these emotions are affecting us, and they manifest themselves into the physicality. So we see that the body that we see as a physical thing, and what we've always referenced to, is actually of the lowest energy state. And so the highest energy state being the soul of the man. And then we have all these levels in between, and they all affect the soul of the man, and they all contribute eventually to the physicality of the body. And so we have assistance. What is the soul of the body? Another is the soul of the cells. And so the combination of these allow us to be the observers. And as such, we can see what we're doing in the presence, and we have a point of view. And as a result of that, we can determine our position, and we can change our position. And so that becomes the key. So whatever position that we wish is a point of manifestation. And so we find that the plasma feeding is what leads to this manifestation. And so, yes, the manifestation may be tangible or non-tangible, visible or non-visible, but every manifestation is some kind of form artifact. And so we find that our emotion of presence is also a form artifact. And it's a form artifact of the energy that's in motion. And that energy in motion at the point of the presence is the manifestation point of the emotion of presence. And that would be the plasmatic reality. And can it manifest into the physical reality? Well, yes, of course it can. But the thing is, there has to be an emotion of precision to determine that. And are we taking enough into account with respect to the emotion of position to understand it? And so we're having trouble identifying our launch field and our target field, and where in the between field can we exist also. And so we have to define the plasma as a kind of energy state. And there are many different kinds of energy states. And we have to see that the energy state of Earth space is one place. And there's an inner space sequence that allows us to inhabit this Earth space. And if we can understand this sequence, we can unlock the gateway to outer space. And this is pretty important. And in fact, it's the most important thing in our lives. So we just have to understand the basic rules and be able to share them with other people so that we can discuss in a very civil manner. Because as we progress, we're finding that the gap between those who don't know what's going on and the rest of us who've been working diligently to try and learn, that gap is widening. And so it causes other problems. And so we need to bridge these gaps, and we can do this by orders of magnitude. And so that'll help immensely, as we have to understand that the higher energy state feeds the lower energy state. And so this all becomes part of natural creation or natural decay. But where does this energy come from? And why does it come? And then there's a consumption in that process. But we find that there are other Magravh conditions in the universe which are catalytic or non-consuming. And so can we achieve that? Have we achieved that? And if we haven't achieved that, why haven't we achieved that? And so we find that we, at this point in time, are not able to be catalytic in this way, that we have to supplement. And so we wait for the feeding of energy to come from a higher state. And fortunately for us, the higher the energy, the faster we get fed. But we have to understand the rules of plasma and its fields, and understand that we can absorb fields. But do we want to absorb all the fields? Well, think about it. If you go to the library, do you want to read every book? Or do you want to gather knowledge? And in the process of gathering the knowledge, do you decide which knowledge you gather? So you actually can facilitate what knowledge you absorb, and then you play a factor in which knowledge you don't absorb. In other words, you create a barrier of fields. But the criteria that's most important is that this is bound to the ethos of the universe. And if we can understand that, then we can understand how the strength can be accommodated for by field relations. And so we find that we could change energy states, not just one by one, but we can transcend multiple energy states. And so we see that the Earth space is a kind of energy state. And for us, it's a good thing that it's gravitationally stable. So we can say that the Earth space is a gravitationally stable energy state. Well, prior to that, there was the inner space of the Earth space. And there was an inner space of the man space. And fortunately for us, this is also gravitationally stable. And as such, it's also a gravitationally stable energy state. But it is bound to the ethos of the universe. And the ethos of the universe is also a gravitationally stable energy state. And this is where we get intelligence. So we can say, oh, you know, if we don't have intelligence, we are ignorant. So does that mean that the opposite is to be knowledgeable? We can say that we're uneducated. And the opposite is to say, well, you know, we're like a professor. We're very educated. or we can say that we're very stupid, or we can say that we're very wise. And so to determine which side of the intelligence balance sheet you're on, you have to determine the relationship of the feeding and the feedback. Unfortunately, the intelligence is a feeding. The memory is the feedback. So then we find that the memory feedback gives us a gravitational stability in the physical realm. But the intelligence feeding can be a feedback from the environment. Where did you get that intelligence when you were a baby? And so we see classic display in the GANS. There's a GANS that's in a bottle. It's a solid silicon bottle. It's called glass, but it's transparent. We can see in it, and we can see the GANS in there, and we can see the rotating field in the center. And so even though we can see it, really there's nothing there. So, you know, if seeing is believing and there's nothing there, then we're not seeing anything. So maybe we're not believing anything, but we know that we see something. And so the believing is knowing. But here's the thing. What created the hole? What created the hole in the GANS? And why? So we must understand that there was some kind of emotional feeding. Because that emotional feeding fed the energy that created that hole, because I sure didn't. So the hole becomes the emotional feedback. So at no point are we saying it's physical. And so we see that throughout the biosphere, there's an affinity with respect to energy exchange, and it is all based on the emotional context. And so there's an emotional feeding and there's an emotional feedback. And so how does that affect your belief system? And since we're so smart in the modern era, we have to figure out how to communicate. And for some reason, it seems to be getting more difficult. But there's various ways to communicate, so there's different languages. But you understand that there's the unspoken language, which we call thought. And then if we want to manifest into a spoken language, well, first we need an alphabet. We have to understand that that would be the foundation for communication. And then we become more skillful, and then we could communicate. Except it's much more difficult today because we seem to bastardize the language. And, you know, the scholars are always looking at trying to understand the languages. And so we had to learn about declensions. And all that is changing the form of the word. So, such as I am or you are. But then we have to do a translation. And can we do a literal translation? And so the scholars are finding that that's not possible. So there's more. And then, of course, there's Babylon, which basically messed everything up. So we have to go even further back. We have to find where this intelligence comes from. How did we construct the alphabet in the first place? And so we find that in English, for instance, we have 5 basic vowels. A, but in terms of intelligence, it's A. And E, in terms of intelligence, is E. And I is E. And O, well, that's O. And U is And then in some languages, there's R, and that would be like Ra. But then there's this other vowel, which is kind of hard to write. And it's particularly prevalent in Chinese, where you have inflection. So you have the same word with a different meaning by applying a different kind of inflection. And so that inflection isn't a physical word, it's an emotion. It's an emotion attachment to the word. And so if you are from that community and that language, you are mindful of these inflections. It isn't, and how do you impart these inflections in the written text? And so this becomes another challenge. And so the entire world is under this challenge. And how do we convey these languages, and how do we transfer this intelligence? And so in last week, we talked about Tibet being the roof of the world, and they do this chanting, Om Mani Padme and they repeat this. And for them, this repetition, this chanting, this meditation puts them on the path of life with intention and wisdom, where we can achieve a pure body, speech, and the mind of a Buddha. But what about the baby talk? Before the chanting, before the meditation, before the vowels. And so you say goo goo gaga, and it has to be like baby talk. Or goo goo gaga, that's monkey talk, maybe. And the other horizontal, some of them even growl. But what about the vertical people? How do they talk? And so they talk through secretions. So if there's the danger, they secrete tannin, and if there's light, then they secrete sap. And what about insects? They go buzzing around. What kind of sound do protozoa make? They seem to be well organized. So there's got to be some kind of plasmatic communication there, because I can't hear it. So this communication is an emotional feeding. Because they all had to learn at some point. But once they learn, then we can advance from there. So we understand that that's not an emotional point anymore. That's a memory feedback. But the memory feedback does need to have an emotional context, because sometimes we blot out our memories. And so when we look at the creation of the universe, we see that the universe is created from energy, and that energy is always in motion. And so if its emotion is coming from somewhere or going to somewhere, so it has to be combining with something. And it can combine in different energy states. So this is a good thing, because now we have a charge that's in motion. And so within respect to our physical reality, so we see that, we have the speed, the strength, and the direction of this energy. But with respect to the plasma reality, remember the proof of concept? We were born. How did that happen? And so we find that we say, well, two forces come together, and they manifest into a maggrav condition where we see the X, Y, and Z axis. And so this becomes the universal harvesting of self-enhancement. But some of us have forgotten that rule, and they go through the loosh harvesting of self-consumption by stealing the energy from someone else. And they maintain that relationship of some individual to the individual you. What we want to do is maintain that relationship of some source to the individual you, because that source is your emotional foundation. It's the energy that you need to bind, to create this manifestation point. And do you need to do it at the expense of others? And so it isn't just two forces coming together, but there's more forces that coming together. And we don't take enough into account. In fact, much of it we discount. And so we're happy with a flash or a glow or glitter, or we say, well, what's important if it's profitable? But when we're finding in our society that we're having food security, energy security, financial security, all diminishing. So is that a confidence in losing? Or is that a lack of confidence in creation? Or is it a lack of gravitational stability? Just simply because we choose what we give our time and attention to. And so we're attracted by the blast and we can't see the bountifulness. And so we find, in our opinion, that there's some kind of genetic defect. Maybe we're contributing to that. So basically, the point being is that the principal matter is a feeding energy. And in order to feed somewhere, it has to come to some kind of gravitational stable position, which we call a maggrav. And so that would become the combination of the principal matter, transition matter, and convergence matter. But where does it do that? So it has to have another reference, another feedback reference, which we call the field of inertia, this field interaction. And so once we've established this gravitational stability of position and the presence, then we can look at the feeding, the intelligence feeding. And so we see that the core component of this energy is like an electron, which is a magnetical PM tick. But it could also be an atom, which is a relationship of an electron or proton in a gravitational state. And does that rule only apply to the plasmatic condition, or is it also a physical condition? And so really the answer is both, because they're all energy states and they all work together. And so to maintain this balanced position, you have to maintain a maggrav condition. So where you have a magnetical electron and a gravitational proton working together as a twin plasma. And so you have this relationship of the large proton plasma feeding the smaller electron plasma. But it doesn't stop there, because the higher strength feeds the weaker strength. So other things have to be taken into account. So this is all done by the basic principles of attraction and repulsion of magnetical and gravitational field forces, which we call feeding and feedback. And then we see that we can manipulate this. We can turn it on and turn it off. We can increase or decrease the strength. And as such, we can change the position. And as the last man standing, we have choices. So one of the choices we'd like is to have a mentor. Let's say you're an athlete, you're a player, you have a coach. Or you're an academic, you're a student, well, you have a teacher. Or you're a child, well, you have a parent. Or you're learning a trade as an apprentice, well, you have a master. But what happens if you don't have that benefit? If you're like an orphan, or you're the last man standing? Uh-oh, how am I going to gain any intelligence? And so fortunately, one of the things that we have is a feedback vision that we get from our environment. So we see our environment with our eyes, our ears, our nose, and our mouth. But we have a soul, and that feeds us. And so between the two, we have this plasmatic symbiosis. But prior to that, we have an RNA. And so the RNA is constantly being modified. It has to do with the adaptation from the sharing of universal energies. And so there's an inner space radiance that comes to you, and that becomes your feeding radiance. And of course, we have the DNA, which is an adaptation of the earth space energies. And that becomes an inner space feedback radiance. And we say that this is a spectrum because it comes in many different flavors. What is it that comes in different flavors? So we refer to these energy feeding packs. And these energy feeding packs within themselves are positive energy that manifests itself as a charge and carries an emotion. That emotion is knowledge. It's a feeding of knowledge. And then from there, we can manifest into whether it be the plasmatic reality or the physical reality. Because what's important is gravitational stability. You have this foundational emotion. And so in order to get that, and in order to have this wide spectrum of feeding, this feeding is radioactive. And it feeds your inner space. And so when we look at the DNA creation, the only difference is it's a feedback spectrum. And it too is radioactive because it imparts this gravitational stability and this emotional foundation. It's very important. Gravitational stability is very important. You can't feed nothing. You have to feed something. And so at the core are these energy packs that are feeding. And so that affects soul positioning and the feeding vision and contributes to the plasmatic symbiosis. And so we see these core energy packs as PM-TIC rays, X-rays, or gamma rays. And we're going to be talking about more of that in the future because all of these are following binding energy paths. It's absolutely necessary to have this binding energy path, to have this Magrath condition, which we call Earth. We're on this Earth. And so this Earth is also emitting energy and exchanging this energy. So when we look at this Magrath feeding dimension of Earth, we find that not only is it emitting energy and absorbing energy to maintain its emotion of position, but it absorbs the same emotion of knowledge that we do. Because the emotion of knowledge is broadcast universally. So by definition, or by extension, your pick, the emotion of knowledge is feeding the Earth and is feeding man space equally. So it's like going to a Chinese buffet, isn't it? You may have 100 different meals there. Everyone eats what they want. Everyone eats what they need. And as such, they have this reference. And so from that reference, they can emit energy and absorb energy. And we do this at light speed. We're doing this all the time. And this is a fact. And so we need skills to learn how we can navigate from the launch field to the landing field and be these energy packs that move everywhere. Because even though we are living in the present, as we study and we see how the stupid Atlanteans, they communicated in their clothing and in their carpets. And they understood the codons of the DNA and the RNA. But we're smarter, aren't we? So we find that regardless of the time in history, that is, the emotion of knowledge was imparted. And so this relationship had to do with how we absorb this. And so we find that we have a dichotomy here. We have a scientific responsibility and a spiritual responsibility. One responsibility and another responsibility, but not the same responsibility. But the two together provide more than two. And this is where the plasma science adds to the knowledge. And so when we look at our physical reality, or we look at our plasma reality, or we look at the conversion point, that vanishing emotion point that allows us to cross over what we call transmutation and changes our position, has to be fed from somewhere. Has to be. Because all of these elements, and we've highlighted only a few elements that are relevant to us in these discussions, because these are basic teachings. They came from somewhere, didn't they? And we know that because we've seen the same thing in the cups of life. We created CO2 GANs and calcium GANs and copper and zinc GANs, amino acids and water. And then each of them had a soul. And collectively, they had a magnetical gravitational relationship and a soul. So these energy packs are carrying this knowledge. And they want to carry this knowledge. They do this willingly. And many of us crave this knowledge. And many of us don't want to admit that we crave this knowledge. And so we account for or discount for what we want to learn. But this emotion of knowledge is imparted universally. And so how much do we take and how much does it contribute to our emotional vision? And so that becomes an individual thing. And so we see the Earth, how it's done. It has these hemispheric rotating plasma fields. And although they rotate in the opposite direction, it manifests into a physical rotation in one direction and imparts a gravitational stability, which is absolutely vital for us to exist on. But every planet has a gravitational stability. But not every planet has the kind of life on that planet the way we have it here. So something is different, isn't it? And so that has to do with choice and selection. So what's most important is this energy in motion that's a two-way street. And we need that to maintain this gravitational stability. But if we look at the reference with respect to the sun, which is like a catalyst, and we look at the earth, which needs supplementation of energy, and likewise man space on earth needs supplementation of energy, we find that size is not the reference point that matters here, because the emotion of knowledge is imparted equally. So what is this equality reference point that we're looking at? And it has to do with the energy packs. The energy packs are converging, and then they are converted, and then from there they create whatever we want to create. And that's what we've seen with the emotion of vision. And we can do that because we have this gravitational stability, this thought, from which our language comes from, that we can relate to our environment and all the good things that come from there. But fundamentally, it explains the covalent bond dimension between the plasmatic spectrum and the physicality spectrum. So there is this bond, although it's not visible, it has to be there. Because if it wasn't there, it wouldn't exist. That is to say, if it has gravitational stability, it exists. And in order to maintain this gravitational stability, it has to have an emotion and absorption spectrum. And so that becomes a dynamic plasma relationship between where you are in your inner space and what you're projecting in that inner space field. And so we look at the sun and how it's operating. It has its own sun space field. And so we on Earth here are benefiting from that and sharing that dynamic plasma relationship with the sun. But we're not exclusive. So the sun space field imparts its energy everywhere. The sea is full of this emotion of knowledge. And so we see not only is this environment, which we see with respect to our man space or our emotional representations and relationships with our space, with some space, whatever space that is, our inner space versus our physical space, for instance, any space, some space with some physical space, it doesn't matter. Or if we want to understand truly our inner space versus outer space, then we have to understand how our space could transmute to some other space. And this is all culminated in some kind of emotional positioning between the emotion of knowledge and the emotion of vision, which leads to the emotion of presence. So this is all part of the dynamic plasma of feeding radiance and a feedback radiance. And so that reality dimension is the link between the two. And so each of us has this spectrum within our inner space. And in that spectrum, we have a representation where we have a feeding radiance. But likewise, we have a feedback radiance, which allows us to maintain our inner space spectrum. And the balance between the two create this Magarav condition, which is our soul spectrum. And so our soul spectrum then becomes the link between the plasmatic manifestation and the physical manifestation of the dynamic plasma fields. So since in the physicality that is of the lowest energy level, by elevating to a higher energy level, we become more effective by orders of magnitude. And so we can enhance our position through the enhancement of our vision. We can also diminish our position by being very selective with respect to our vision. So our position is affected by our vision. And that's the difference between poor health and good health, peace and prosperity, and whatever else we've settled for. So this is all part of the gravitational stability of the dreamscape elevation. And it's all governed by the emotion. So we find that the emotion is actually an energy. Now, so we say, well, the energy is a charge in motion. So then what's knowledge? So the knowledge becomes intelligence in motion. So then the emotion, therefore, is a byproduct of the feeding process. And the memory is a byproduct of the feedback process. This is the root of creation. And this knowledge comes in different flavors, doesn't it? There's over, say, 8 billion of us on this planet, and we're all unique. And we all need to be fed. So we need a broad spectrum of knowledge. And we need a broad spectrum of emotions. And it's like a buffet. All of this knowledge comes in different flavors, and it all contributes to the gravitational stability. But each of us have the capability of taking advantage of the knowledge in motion. You take what you need and give what you do not need. But let's change that. Why don't we say, let's absorb what we need to enhance our souls? And let's emit to enhance other souls. So this emotion of knowledge, as we absorb this, we don't consume it. We take a part of it. We take a part of it that we need for the purposes of supplementation. And the rest of it, we allow it to move on. Not as a discard. It's just like going to the buffet. You take enough to fill your plate, and you leave the rest for others. But this is a different kind of feeding, because your flavor contributes to this emotion. You are part of the process. And we're trying to find what matters. Well, you matter. All of us matter. We're all part of the process. We're all in it together equally. And so the emotion of knowledge doesn't just stop with humanity, but it extends to the planet, and it extends to the universal community as well. And so not only are we looking what we give and take energy from, or who the leader is, who's our mentor, but what is the source of your inspiration? You don't have a mentor. You're the last man standing. Where do you get this feeding from? How do you get this? And how do you know? Well, you have to trust that the Earth seems to be doing a pretty good job, because the Peace Dome is dynamically fed by this emotion of knowledge, along with the soul of the Earth body, right? You have to have some kind of gravitational stability to feed to. So the emotion of knowledge depends on the Earth body. Well, the vertical people have the same kind of demands on intelligence. They already have the emotion of peace. It's inherent in their emotion of knowledge. You wonder if the flowers went to flower school. And so we find that the vertical people answer the call of freedom and emancipation. They do this on an emotional basis. The Earth also seeks this freedom and emancipation and does that on an emotional basis. So we, as man, we have to choose our existential adaptation to the harvest of the plasma emotional energy of the plasma universe. We have to understand that the pursuit of happiness is a failure, because our position is a failure of vision in the emotional context. And so the truth is, we've never launched a rocket into outer space. Rockets don't go into outer space. And all of us who were born prefer the emotion of knowledge as opposed to street smarts. Street smarts is something that you get when you're on the street in the physicality. But the emotion of knowledge is something that the universe gives you. And you need that as a foundation so that you can interpret your street smarts. And we all need to be street smart now. We all need to navigate through this emotion of position map and understand the magnetical feeding and the gravitational feedback, and how important this gravitational stability is in order to maintain that position. And that gravitational stability doesn't just mean a physical presence. It means an ability to communicate within yourself, around yourself, and the possibilities are now open, and the opportunities are there, and there are no intermediaries. So we have to understand that the soul is following a sequence. So we see that the soul of the sun plus the soul of the earth is what attracted the soul of the man. But where did you go? Something's missing. It has to do with the plasma dimensions of matter. Some are physical and some are plasmatic. And so if we want to come here, that becomes the dominant matter state. And we all have this common denominator of wanting to manifest into the physicality. That manifestation in the physicality is specifically called materialization. That's a unique characteristic of manifestation. And so, in order to transmute through outer space, you have to dematerialize. And then we have the option to rematerialize. This is a specific manifestation. So therefore, if we want to manifest on Earth, then Earth has to be here first. So the soul sequencing priority is that the soul of the solar system plus the soul of the sun attracted the soul of the Earth. Okay, well, now we have a place to go. Now we can send that emotion of knowledge to that place and then connect further. The soul of the sun plus the soul of the earth attracts the soul of the earth body. Okay, well, now we have a destination. So now we can take that soul of the earth body plus the soul of the man and attract our soul of the body. Okay, well, this is good. Now we're making progress. So the final manifestation in the physicality of the earth allows us to the final manifestation of the physicality of the body. This is a manifestation of gravitational stability, which we call materialization. And so we can test all of these concepts likewise on the flight tests to Mars that are coming up. So we have to understand that this emotion of knowledge is continually feeding us into our man space. But our man space has at least three amigos: the soul of the man, the soul of the body, and the soul of the cells. So the emotion of knowledge is indiscriminately feeding all of them. And that's a good thing. Looking after 73 trillion cells is a lot of work. So let the soul of the cells absorb what they need. And if we allow the soul of the cells to do the job, why don't we let the soul of the earth do the same thing and absorb the emotion of knowledge into the earth space as well. It knows better than we do, and it was here before us. So we find that the reality dimension, what we call outer space, is not a place. It's a method of energy transfer. It's energy in motion. And so we've seen that with the cups of life, and we call them the cups of life, not the cups of the pandemic or the cups of Gans or anything else, because that's where we get our emotional strength. It comes from the emotion of knowledge. And so this emotion of knowledge tells us that the earthscape landscape is heaven, and man's space is the dreamscape is peace. We're inherently peaceful. This planet is inherently peaceful. That's the emotion of vision that we need to work on. And so that's all given to us. It's all given to us through the emotion of knowledge. All of us, equally. This is where the science meets the soul of man for peace. And we're in the post-December 16th era now, when we can make choices. We're looking for that graceful sweet spot, that graceful sweet space. And on March 24th, it's time for the world leaders to be introduced to the true power of the emotion of knowledge. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute, Teachings on Plasma Science, calling all Earth Space sweethearts. Make the conscious choice that you have already made in the dreamscape. There's a world peace treaty. Sign it with a pen, sign it with your heart, sign it with the soul. This is all part of the emotion of vision, which allows the fields of life to have the choices free from boundaries or abuse. Follow that emotion of position map and use the universal community as your travel guide. The ethos of the universe is peaceful. And so we need this earthbound physical and emotional gravitational transformation. Peace on earth, heaven on earth. And feed it with the emotion of knowledge. That's a transmutation connection to that manifestation point, which allows the adaptation and awareness as an inner space emotional construct and connects equally to the universal broadcast of inner space of freedom. This emotion of knowledge feeding is of the essence of universal morality. So choose what you want wisely and dare to dream. And we say the plasma science needs to continue, therefore, to be delivered in exchange for peace on earth. So welcome to the outer space age. Hope you enjoyed today's class. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. Is there an emotion of teaching? Or is it the soul of teaching?
Oh, well, let's answer that question next week, shall we?
Well, let's open up. If anyone wants to raise a question, make a point, a comment, we're allowed to talk back to the teacher here. It's not just a one-way communication. Alex is open to take your questions or explain what he understands about your question. And again, we're just scratching sort of the surface of this knowledge. I told Mr. Kesh said, if you can put together this week's and last week's and the weeks before that and connect all the dots, I don't know anyone who can actually do that other than the soul. And perhaps this is what we're getting to, where the soul of the man actually teaches the physicality. So who would like to make a statement or ask a simple question? Something that you wanted to, that's been covered here, or perhaps something else. Alex is quite well-rounded in the knowledge, I think. Do you think, Alex, when we go to other places, we're going to be back in the same position that we forgot how we got there? Or was this the only time, and once we're awakened, we'll be continually awakened?
See, that's a really good question, because, you know, when you look at a caterpillar morphing into a butterfly, I don't see mommy and daddy butterfly hanging around. And so, you know, I wonder how the butterfly would, what is on the butterfly's mind?
Flower?
Well, you know,
Reproduction?
does he remember that he didn't have wings? And does he know what to do with the wings? And who is the butterfly's mentor? You know, you just come out of this cocoon, you look around and you say, well, hello world, I'm here. And where does the knowledge come from?
Well, do you remember most of the clothes you wore as a child?
Well, mommy gave that to me.
Right. One of the only ones I remember is that yellow raincoat that she made me wear. And all the kids laughed that I had this yellow slicker on, and that one I do remember, protecting me from the elements or the wet. You know, but most of the clothes, and I'm thinking of the caterpillar. Does the caterpillar remember his transition? Or did it just happen?
We have a lot of people in the audience who keep pets, and specifically in my mind is a cat. So often, the mommy cat will not make it, and the kittens are left stranded. We see this often. Without the mother or without the parents, how do the kittens learn? What is the method of their learning? They do quite well, don't they?
Well, I would say if they're hand-fed, yes. But if they had to learn in the wild, it's not like a human where we get 20 years or so of education and then we start. Most of these animals or living wild, they don't have a lot of time, but they learn something. But if the mother isn't there, then yeah, it would be quite a difficult process, I think, for survival, because they really haven't been taught.
So they depend on this emotion of knowledge that comes to them. It's ingrained in their RNA.
Okay.
So the point being, we have this knowledge ingrained in our RNA as well. So why do we have the audacity to discount that? Why do we say, well, our ancestors are stupid and we're the smart ones? There's no justification in that, not really. We have the benefit of memory. We have the benefit of history. We have the benefit of experience.
Right, and we weren't really aware we could operate in both dimensions. We called it the daydream, or we called it the dream, but we only thought we were in the physicality, but we're not. We have to accept that we're this chameleon, or living two, one in the physicality and one in the dimension of energy, which again, if you ask anyone around you, they'll say, that doesn't exist. That's a fairy tale. I don't know who's been putting ideas in your mind. So this is one of the struggles that we all have, is to accept that we're actually operating in two dimensions.
Yeah, and not only that, but we have to understand that we can be our best teacher. We just have to have the trust in our knowledge. That's been kind of socially beaten out of us. We don't have this trust even in ourselves. We have to have a mentor, right? We have to have a guru. We have to have a teacher.
Yeah, that's what I had mentioned earlier about, if you can't settle that first question about, I made the man in the image of myself, accepting that you are the creator, then you have to have an intermediary. So that, to me, that's the first question that you have to settle. Are you made in the image of the creator, or the priest, or the rabbi? No, that's not exactly what it means. It means something different. That's not it. So this is the first question I think we have to answer for ourselves. Am I made in the image of the creator? If not, then you have to go and get abused by the rabbis or the priests or the ayatollahs, and you need an intermediary. And isn't this what he's trying to say? You're your own farmer, your own doctor, your own traveler, your own communicator, because you're made in the image of the creator. But if you don't settle that first question, then, or if you settle it the wrong way, then you have to be told what to think, how to think, who's your intermediary, and so on. I think this is coming to an end. It may take some time, but we're not closing any of the churches or the religions. The people will understand who they are and just walk away from that structure.
Well, Mark, I don't think we're, having a problem with the educational institutes. If we were going to say that a university or a school or a church is also a place of learning, I don't think we're at odds with that at all. It's the lordship. It's the master-slave relationship.
Where did you hang your diploma? Not under the toilet paper roll.
No, I didn't have that success, but yeah, you see, I had different motivations, and so frankly, I had a difficult time deciding which university to go to. No one ever told me the proper reason why I should go to one university as opposed to another. I found out later. I found out which university had the prettiest girls. So I was too old to go to university then.
Mr. Kesh said about how we're basically used energies in the universe, right? It's not the second hand or third hand. I think someone said that earlier in another meeting, but we're billionth hand or more. So what about the soul itself? you had that picture of the soul up there, I think, with one in the center and 6 or 8 around it. If those cells are created out of used energy, is the soul also out of used energies? Because as we know, the egg and the sperm come together, they divide until 8 or 16 or whatever it is, and then they sort of go into a holding pattern until the soul comes in. And then the soul continues this for another whatever, just feeding off continues the structure off the fields of the universe. But is that soul also used energies, or is this a totally new creation? That we know the cells are used energy, correct? Not this one, another one you had, I think it was red. And it had the soul in the center and then the other ones around it. No.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So if the cells that created the soul are from used fields, is the soul itself created out of used fields? Or is that, again, it's just a question that I thought I'd just bring up, because we're so arrogant, he said, of our structure and everything, but they're hand-me-downs from a billionth division, so to speak. So is the soul, no, this isn't the one. It's red. You showed it maybe in the middle of the present, maybe back in near the beginning. You see these 6 circles you had and then one in the center. There we go. That's the one. So what happens here, we have the physicality, correct? The sperm and the egg came together, which again, they're out of used energies, I would think. And then the soul is created or drawn in, or the interaction of these cells together created the environment for the soul to come in. So my question is, are those energies of the soul also hand-me-downs?
So I'm going to answer that question in the affirmative and say yes. The thing is it is not a derogatory term. It's not like yesterday's lunch. There is an advancement, there's an enhancement, because life is for learning. So you pick up the knowledge from previous and you add to that. So the key, as per usual, Mark, you asked 3 questions in the same question. So the thing is that the soul is established with the emotion of knowledge. And then it adds to that knowledge and retains that knowledge in the form of a memory. So you know that because you can't remember when you were born. But the thing is, you have an intelligence that comes along with it. Now the question becomes, do you use that intelligence? And how do you use that intelligence? So here's a very good thing. You have to navigate through your life, and it's a full-time job. But all your cells have to navigate through their life to keep you gravitationally stable. You don't have the energy or the time and attention to devote to maintaining that. So we call that as part of our involuntary system. But it's not. The soul of the cells have a responsibility. And the soul of the body has a responsibility. So now you, as a soul of the man, can play in that environment. And the classic case would be where the yoga instructor wants to show how he can dominate his physicality by controlling his heart. Well, you don't dare distract him while he's controlling his heart, because if you distract him, he'll forget to control his heart and his heart will stop beating. So this is the misunderstanding where man wants to dominate his physicality. It's just like chanting these, mantras.
Yeah.
If I chant this, then I will be purified. Really, well, if that's what you choose to do, that'll be fine. But the question that I ask is where is your contribution to life on this planet, and why did you come here? And if in the process of coming here, the choice is, well, you know what, I don't want to be part of the problem. And so I don't want to be part of anything. So I'm just going to be a monk in a monastery and, shall we say, have everything provided for me and be kind of taken out of the game, if you will. Well, I think it's very important for us to be involved. And how can we be involved when we are weak? But the truth is we're not weak. We have the perception of being weak. And where is the grounding for that perception? It's right in our trust, the trust of our intelligence, the trust in our knowledge, the trust in being born. Without that trust, we can never exercise our strength. Without that trust, in reality, we can't have any gravitational stability. So let's say you want to be a master in your craft. You want to be a master carpenter. So you have the inherent knowledge, to learn how to use tools, to learn how to speak, to learn how to communicate with the teacher, and then to be creative. You have that trust, and that gives you the confidence, and then you become a journeyman, and then you become a master craftsman. Okay, well, that's great in that particular field. Is that the only field of reference that you can make? And so we have different subjects, right? We have physics, we have chemistry, biology, we have engineers, we have architects, we have musicians, we have artists. So that contribution that we make is contributing to the welfare of this planet. And so we try and contribute within that choice of field of interest that we have. But besides the emotion of knowledge, which transcends all of these fields, there's another factor, and that's abuse. And that is loosh harvesting. And so you find that if you are uneducated and classified as stupid, so you don't have the wherewithal to be wise, unless you're educated and say you're a professional, you're a doctor, lawyer, accountant, or something like that. So you demand respect. On what grounds? What respect the knowledge that you have gained through the participation in that vocation. But that doesn't grant you dominion. That doesn't grant you kingship. That doesn't grant you governance, lordship. We're all created equal. So really, it isn't the degree or the vocation, because all members of society are important. and an untouchable is an untouchable only because the Brahmins say so. Is an untouchable also ignorant? Is it possible for an untouchable to be wise? The emotion of knowledge is universal, and it's ingrained, and it's constantly feeding. So now we're at the point where we can trust this knowledge and enhance it. Whoa, you have the audacity to enhance the knowledge of the Creator. Isn't the process of creation enhancement? Isn't the Creator creating? Does the Creator stop creating?
Thank you, Alex. Anyone else would like, unless you haven't finished?
I'm asking more questions than providing answers.
Aren't we all? We all seem to have more questions than solid answers, but we'll get to this tipping point at some time and place. I know we're feeding the physicality, but we need to teach the soul how to feed the physicality, apparently. And I know he said, well, we know our soul goes across the universe, when you go to sleep and so on, but it doesn't seem to gather the energies to feed that physicality at this point. But I know he said that in the future, we'd learn when the soul goes out into the universe that it can bring back energies that it would feed the physicality for hundreds of years or weeks or months or periods of time. May not be for hundreds of years, maybe it's for thousands of years, but the soul doesn't do that at this point. And I don't know if that will happen in the future, or we can't always be using systems. The systems are only to train the soul, teach the soul how to feed the physicality and other things, I'm sure. But yes, many more questions than solid answers. But we're on a path to find out more. And we are. Again, we have more understanding about the soul than the Pope, and more understanding about the creation process, and so many different processes than the professors and the rest of them that appear to have the connection. But as Mr. Kesh said, they never read the book.
Well, I think the confounding question overall is, given the opportunity to have peace and prosperity or war and misery, I don't understand why we're having this debate. And it just
Right. I think one of the major questions was, are we alone in the universe? This is one of man's major questions. Now, we know we thoroughly answered that question, that there's life in every corner, every spot. Many we can see and many we can't see. The second question usually is, what am I here for? Why have I been created? What is my relationship to the universe? And I think we're answering that as well in so many ways.
Well, it behooves us to answer that question. So, and the fundamental, simplistic way to determine something is to look at our impact on this planet and say, is the Earth better for us having been here today? you know, what is the difference between waking up in the morning and going to bed at night? Has there been a benefit to the earth? And did we play a part in that? And if the answer is yes, then we can go from there. But who is the person who's going to answer that question? You can't defer that answer. The answer comes from within.
Great.
And you have to have a basis to make that decision. So, you don't need someone to come and pat you on the back. Oh, you did a good job today. Nobody died as a result of you being here. Oh, well, is that the measure? So we all have different measures, right? And it's arbitrary. It's individualistic. We choose what we measure, and then we become highly critical. And of course, sometimes we set unrealistic goals, but the fact of the matter is that we're looking at it from a point of physicality. And what we need to realize is that we have to trust our emotions, because our illnesses are psychosomatic in so many ways. And we've compounded them with artificial limbs and other medical implants that have made it more difficult. So we treat the body as if it's a car, and they say, well, you have a defective kidney. We'll just remove one because you have two, right? Well, if we did the same thing with a car and say, oh, well, my right front tire is not working properly, imagine the mechanic just say, well, we'll just remove one. You still have three other tires, right? It's ludicrous, the way we operate, and we have no respect. And then, to have the audacity that we're supposedly smarter when we don't have the answers. So the answer really is that the answer's there looking at us square in our face. Life exists, life is for learning, and we chose to get here. Okay, so now what do we do? That was the choice we made to get here. What do we choose to do on the next day, and the next day, and the next day? And can we do this? So we found that, one of the benefits of looking through history is you see the patterns, and the patterns of success and failure. And so we have to make a change. And can we do that change without the assistance of technology? Well, it hasn't been for lack of trying, has it? We've had many angels and prophets and many gods, visit us, and each in their own way. And it's just like you go to school and you have more than one teacher. And so you say, well, some teachers were better than other teachers. But the point being, what exactly did you learn? And then now what you learn, so what? And I think that was the question that I had in school all the time when I asked the teachers, why are we learning this thing? What's the benefit of it? I didn't really find out until I left school. Like for instance, if I was learning Latin, which they don't teach in school anymore, I couldn't see what the purpose was for learning about Latin. But I see the importance now, because the Latin was derived from the basic mouthing, grunting sounds that we made. And so that was the structure, that was the foundation of the structure of language. Okay. So now, we understand that it had to come from somewhere.
Right.
And
Emphasis on the language, but not the zero-time communication capability. That went out the window, didn't it?
exactly. Yeah. So there's more. And then, who do we reference if we can't have a mentor? And then, we ask our friends. And you know, I spent a lot of time reading, and it was nice to go to the coffee shop and read. And a lot of people, especially in a university town, the students would all go to the coffee shop and talk about stuff, and you couldn't help but, you know, eavesdrop and listen to what they were saying. And it was a lot about nothing. They were talking about nothing. They were talking about their personal experience and sharing their personal experiences, and I guess comparing notes. No, you know, how do you become street smart, right? How do you become socially smart? And that was the important thing. And yet these were students, and you never heard them talking about anything, you know, exotic or anything that would, shall we say, contribute to a betterment of the quality of life on this planet. It was all self-centered, egocentric. And then today, you look at social media, and it's actually gotten worse, because not only are they talking about less significant things, but the words that they're using are confusing. They don't have the meanings for it. But are the people more stupid than they were years ago? No, because the emotion of knowledge is feeding them. It's just that they're reluctant to accept it. You know, I don't want to hear that stuff. I just want to hear something that's warm and fuzzy. Okay, teddy bear. How's that for warm and fuzzy? You know, and now what? So where does that get you, and what is the purpose? And so, is that giving you emotional satisfaction? Is emotional satisfaction important to you? Well, yes, it is. But at the end of the day, your tiny perfect world may be more perfect, and in fact, it can be more tiny. And so you can't do anything about the rest of the world. Well, guess what? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Because we are part of a collective. If we can manage 73 trillion cells in our body, we should be a lot more successful in coordinating several billion people. A lot. We should be a lot better. So that's the inspiration that you need. And the knowledge is already within us. All we have to do is ask the right questions. And in fact, maybe make sure that we don't ask the wrong people, because we find that they have self-serving interests. And how can you determine that? You have to have skill in determining that. So you don't listen to the words, you listen to the intent. You have to see what they say, not hear what they say.
Yes, it seems like we've been in this fishbowl much too long, thinking that the whole existence is this state of physicality, and getting things or buying things are all connected to the physicality. Now we have to start to understand, and he said this, to look at everything in both dimensions now. In the physical dimension, he said we're not disconnecting from the physicality. We need that. We have to disconnect from the fields of this planet in a way. And I guess the soul is already disconnected. It can't be held by the fields of any position. It can move. It can change. It can transmute. So, yeah, there's a lot to.
Well, yes, it can, but
yeah.
But Mark, it has to do this at a higher level. And the soul operates at this higher level of energy. And so it is gravitationally stable within the inner space of the earth space, of the man space. It's gravitationally stable within the man space, right? So
I'd say no.
You say no?
No, because it's moving all the time. It's daydreaming, it's dreaming, it's going different places. It's not bound to the fields of this planet at all.
Oh, no, I get it, but you know, while our physicality is operating, our soul is gravitationally stable within the inner space of the physical body. And you know, that's all we see and give credit to. So we said, well, you know, that's a pretty sweet deal. I get to have my soul within me, and it does, you know, the work that I want it to do. No, no, the soul does have an agenda, and the soul actually leaves the body, as you say, travels all over the place to what? To engage with this emotion of knowledge. And so it brings this emotion of knowledge to the soul of the body. But if the soul of the body puts up this barrier, which it can do because you can create a barrier of fields, then, you know, it frustrates the soul of the man. But the soul of the man is benevolent and continues to feed. So, how do we bridge that gap? Well, there's an inherent emotion that is ingrained within us. And the moment we get into that field, the pressure that's going to be on the soul of the body is going to be enormous. And for those who fight it, it is going to be painful. But those who embrace it, they will understand the meaning of heaven on earth. And it won't take long. It could be like a light switch. And so I'm suggesting that March 24th, well, I'm not alone in this suggestion. I'm just saying March 24th is going to be a pivotal point because we will be opening up a new plasmatic field of a higher energy state. It'll be a new league, and it'll be looking for teams in that league. What do they say? You build it and they will come?
But aren't the souls already interacting? Aren't they already communicating? Aren't they already connected with each other?
It's not the souls that are the problem. It's the delay and consequences of physical manifestation, the physical materialization. And the soul of the body is disconnected. Soul of the man doesn't have any problems. Soul of the man is obeying the laws of the universe because it understands the ethos of the universe. Your best friend is your soul. So who's the enemy?
Right. It just has to start teaching the physicality more. And for some reason, it hasn't. At least otherwise, we would have known all this, wouldn't we?
Okay, well, look, I found out the hard way. Okay, it took me 40 years, right? It took me 40 years to find out that everything that I learned was junk. And you know, not everything that I've learned. I'm just saying that what I gave value to, what I cherished,
Yeah.
you know, I want that, you know, chicken in every pot, car in every garage. I want the nice job, the nice clothes, the nice lifestyle. Is all for me.
Nothing wrong with that. I mean, he said you can be a prophet of your pocket and your soul. So
yeah, but the thing is that no, I agree. There's nothing wrong with it. And this is where the other problem comes in, because there's an opinion that goes along with that. And so that becomes a social opinion. But then I found out that social opinion doesn't matter. Your opinion matters. And you find that you're your harshest critic. And also you become your harshest judge. And you know, if we are irresponsible in our actions, then, you know, this becomes an important point. But if we are ethical and responsible in our actions, then there's nothing to fear. And so we need to be able to forgive ourselves, because we are a product of the environment. We cannot be in the environment and not respond to that environment. That's where the feedback comes in. But we need to be able to interpret it properly. And so that's where's the basis of that. And that's the emotion of knowledge that is ingrained right in RNA. And we can't just say, oh, well, women have this capability because they have this intuitive knowledge. So it's a woman thing, right? And because it's a woman thing, well, let's discount that, okay, because it's emotional, and you don't want to get an emotional woman thing involved with that. Well, that's just another form of racism, isn't it? So this whole notion of racism isn't just the color of the skin. It has to do with whether, you know, you have a full set of teeth, you know, whether you have a nice suit, whether you have a fancy car or whatever. And so, you know, we believe in the superficiality and we ignore the substance. Well, I learned about the superficiality, and spent over $200,000 on cancer treatment, and I got nothing in return. And then I found out the truth, and I got everything back in return. Why? Because discard the superficiality and become gravitationally stable with the substantial.
Yes, and the doctors apparently have come up with a number of combination of solutions. He said for cancer, they're looking for cancer patients now. So that abuse is going to stop, where people pay $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000. The insurance.
Well, actually, it's not the money. Okay, it's the value for the money. You know, if you go to a mechanic and he charges you $1,000 to change a tire, and that tire is flat, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's $1,000 or $10. The tire's flat. That's the problem. So, you know, in my town here, I don't change my tires in my town here, right? Because everywhere I went, they gave me flat tires. That's just the way they do things. So I have to go out of town to get new tires. Isn't that crazy? And let me tell you, when I go out of town to get the new tires, they treat me with respect because they know I traveled 4 hours to get there. They charge me the same amount as they charge everybody else, but they treat me with respect because they know I made an effort to come down there. And so that's, you know, for them, it's money from heaven, isn't it? But I got damn good tires.
Would someone else like to make a point, raise a question, a comment? Something you've been thinking about? Hasn't been resolved?
Yes.
Hello.
Hi, Mark.
Solomon.
Hi, Alex. How
Hi
are
there.
you? Everybody's okay. Nice to hear from you. I have a question related to this gravitational stability. I mean, this seed of life on the left is similar, the 7 around by 6 circles or spheres, depends on which dimension we look, is could be the gravitational soul or neutron. This is my question. If you can illuminate me.
I didn't get the question.
So the question is any similarity between the soul and the seed of life with 6 sphere or circles around 1, and this one is the 7 circle or sphere, is like carbon 7, the isotope. And this seed of life is a symbol, you know. I was talking about the flower of life, which is formed from 19 circles, not from 7 like this one. And we know that we talk about symbols just to understand better, but something is there. It's a reality there, because a life is based on carbon, and on the isotope of carbon. And for example, carbon 7 is one isotope and could be the seed of life. And I am talking about what is in the middle, and this is gravitational. Is the story of how to create gravitational surrounded by these 6 circle of magnetical, maybe, which protect and content the 7 circle or sphere which is in the middle, and this is the core, is the soul. This is a gravitational part of the seed of life.
I asked Alex to bring that picture up because we were talking earlier about the sperm and the egg dividing, and then it gets to 2 divisions, 4 divisions, 8 divisions, or how many, and then it stops. And then it creates the condition for the soul to come in or manifest, and then the soul starts to take over the process in feeding through the fields, the continuation of the structure. So maybe it did create a gravitational, but then the soul takes over and starts magnetically giving, I think, to continue the structure until for another 20 days or something, until the umbilical cord is connected, and that's where we get connected to the matter state. But they create something, a space there for the soul to come in, and then the soul takes over feeding and multiplying the structure until the cord is connected from the mother.
Yeah. And so when we talk about the emotion of knowledge, and this is specifically referencing what I spoke about several weeks ago when we talked about the heart preceding the brain. So what we're looking at is the difference between physicality and the plasma reality. And to differentiate between these two is absolutely vital. The reason that I backtracked on this is because if we have the heart preceding the brain, then the brain becomes the seed for the seed of the soul. And the construct, that we rely on, whether it's hexagonal or pentagonal or whatever, is actually neither here nor there, and as we look at the periodic table of elements, and we see, you know, the number of neutrons and protons, electrons in there. So we find that the number of fields that encircle the core increase. But then we look at the variety on the planet, and you know, we have different elements on the planet, manifest them the same way. So you know, we have copper, we have oil, we have gold, and they're all in their specific spot. These are all physical manifestations. So what we're looking at is to try and rationalize this new technology where the soul manifests first. If the soul manifests first, it would do so on a plasmatic basis. And so if we're looking at the sperm and the egg, that is on a physical basis. And the sequence there is that the heart precedes the brain. So the seat of the soul of the body would rest in the physicality, whereas the seat of the soul of the man would rest in the brain structure. So the question then becomes, how does this new technology actually work? Because what we are now facing with two new massive revelations. One is that we can extend life. So if there's a deficiency or there's a lack of supplementation which causes aging, and we reverse that, then the aging not only becomes eliminated, but then the life itself in terms of physicality becomes prolonged. The second thing is in the ability to procreate. So in other words, that a woman generally gets to the life-bearing stage at a certain age. We can now also extend that. And then the third aspect of it is that it doesn't have to be with the sperm and the egg. So I personally can't explain these things, but they were brought up at the Knowledge Seekers workshops over the last 2 months. And so now we're seeing an anomaly where we could call it virgin birth being possible, some kind of immortality being possible, and the elimination of ill health as being possible with the new plasma science. And so in order to understand that, we have to specifically be able to differentiate between the physical manifestation, which we call materialization, and the plasmatic reality, which is a substructure that feeds the physical reality. And what feeds the substructure? That being the emotion of knowledge. So that knowledge is there. That knowledge is the knowledge that we actually employed to be born. But science can't answer that. And the spiritual community refuses to answer that. So we now have to look at the whole matter of life in a different context. And we can't say, oh, well, you know, you go to school, you get a job, you have a family, and you die. That's the simplistic way that a lot of people look at their life. We now have purpose in life. We now have an ability to conduct our life in a more beneficial way, not just for us. But if it's just for us, then it's from the physically binding point of view. What we have to look at is for the benefit to life on behalf of. So we need to be not only more skillful, but we need to be also more capable, which means we need to be healthier in order to be functionaries. And in order to be functionaries, energy exchange is a two-way street. Functionaries for what? And so we have to be functionaries on behalf of the rest of humanity. And then what, do we stop there? So now we have another anomaly, and that is that the universal community has the same problem. And now I'm very glad that the universal community has admitted that, okay? Because for us to wait for these aliens to come on the White House lawn, you know, that's going to be another 30,000 years. They don't have the technology to do that. So now we have this technology available, and that's going to be a game changer. And so all of these anomalies, which through our education system, through our society, through our financial system and everything, which has not only lacked explanation, but has defied our way of life. And now we have to relearn. Yeah, we have to, all over again. And the basis is one: acceptance, awareness, and trust. And so we cannot apply a mathematical scheme and say, so many points and like that, because what we're looking at is the feedback. And what we need to focus on is the feeding system, the non-tangible, non-visible reality that is around us all the time. And when we start to depend on that, think about that, trust and depend on a system that you can't see, now then we're free, then we're home free. And that's the whole objective. So thank you very much for the question.
Thank you for the answer. I have another question about emotion of all kinds. If we can make the difference, if you can make a difference between all, will be great. As I came later on, so maybe you already taught about this.
Are you able to see this slide? Is this kind of what you're referring to?
Yes, yes.
So the commonality for all of these emotions is they're non-tangible, non-physical. However, they pertain to a physical presence, or they pertain to a plasmatic reality. So when we're looking at our, in fact, when we're looking at the first 5 here, they all have a physical context. Some of them bridge into the plasmatic context. So the emotion of vision, which we covered last week, bridges those two, because everyone can see things, but everybody believes different things. They don't really understand what they're seeing. So we have to have the knowledge there. The emotion of knowledge is virtually plasmatic exclusively, because the emotion of knowledge transcends the physical materialization. It imparts itself to the plasmatic reality. And it is non-discriminatory. And in fact, it's broad-based to everywhere. So that this is the broadcasting of the benevolence of the universe, the adoption of peace for the purpose of creation, for the creation of life and harmony. And so this emotion of knowledge is ingrained, and we know it's there because, we can see it in our grains, right? We can see it in the wheat, we can see it in the flowers, we can see it in the insects. And, when we look in space, there are no churches or schools or courts or big box stores or grocery stores or not even car dealerships. So, well, why are we so dependent on that here? And when do we make that change? So it boils down to the acceptance and trust in this emotion of knowledge, and to understand that if you were, say, to cut yourself, so you cut your finger, you don't have the physical knowledge to repair that cut, but your soul of the body does. And so that wound will heal. You don't have to do anything. You just have to trust that the body has the knowledge to heal. Well, if you have the trust for the wound to heal, for a little cut to heal, then you should have the knowledge for the cancer to heal. And if you have that confidence, then that should transcend into healing our society and understanding that we are part of a community. And when one member of that community is sick, the whole community is sick. So it becomes our responsibility to have everybody heal, because everybody is part of the process. When we say everybody, that includes everybody, so not leave anybody behind. And that becomes the challenge. And it's been a far greater challenge than I ever thought, because I'll tell you one thing, and all of you remember when you were teenagers and you looked at your parents and say, boy, oh boy, the way you guys run life, I'm not gonna do that. We will do it better. Well, no, it isn't really much better. And then, in fact, it's even gone the other way. In my opinion, has gotten worse. And so why is that? Because I'm just one person. I have to take care of business. But everybody has that same responsibility. So just change the point of view. Take care of business on behalf of. So in order for me to be a universal functionary and to function properly, I have to be healthy. And in order to be healthy, I need to be part of the solution, not be part of the problem. And that is the foundation of the emotion of knowledge. That is inherent. Thou shalt not kill. That's a universal truth. So what else do you need to know? And from there you build. And that's the whole point. So everything else then becomes a manifestation of the physicality. And as we said earlier today, it's a blessing to be able to manifest into the physicality. We're not deficient. We're not the inferior species, and the aliens being the superior species. They have the same problems that we do, because they have the same limitations as we do. Just because they have more technology doesn't make them wise. You're a Brahmin, you're an untouchable. You're a Brahmin and you're wise, and you're an untouchable and you're stupid. Really? Who wrote that rule? The emotion of knowledge transcends economic opportunity. That's the whole message today. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Frank. I don't understand what is the emotion of position.
You have to navigate through life. So you made choices. You made those choices.
When we dream is an emotion of vision.
Yes.
Yeah. And position is it's in here on the reality, but this reality is also a dream at my
No,
knowledge. Yeah.
well, let's say, okay, so you were striving for higher education. So at one point, you didn't have the degree. Now you have the degree. How did that position manifest? You had an emotional motivation to do that. And so through that emotion, you manifest into a degree.
Okay, I understood now. And emotion of man and emotion of physicality, it's about the soul of man and soul of physicality.
Well, the emotion of physicality also has two faces. So you know, the one thing we talk about is the difference between love and lust, right? And so where does that play in terms of the physicality? So the way we see the physicality in terms of procreation is through the egg and the sperm. But you know, in the terms of the physicality with respect to materialization on this planet, we're in heaven here, and there are joys to be here. The thing is if the emotion of physicality is disconnected from the emotion of knowledge, then we may fall into the trap of abuse, where in fact we become the abuser. And so the position of abuse needs to have a grounding. And quite frequently that becomes, oh, you know, my father beat me when I was a child, so I will, you know, beat my wife. It becomes an excuse. So there's no grounding for that. So the emotion of physicality is an applied grounding. It's a construct. It's an emotional construct. And we'll say, oh, you know, or I was raped as a child, so you know, life dealt me a bad hand, and so I'm going to carry that as a badge of honor through all my life. And so I'm a miserable sort because, you know, I was abused as a child. Well, you know, that physicality that was abused as a child had no prerequisite to carry that physicality in the emotional state. None. All you have to do is discard it. Now, I understand it's easier said than done, but you know, if I look at, and I have the opportunity to look at my youth, and there's areas where I squandered my youth, and I feel bad about that. However, by changing my viewpoint, I could change my outlook with respect to that history. So on the one hand, say, oh, you know, I ran into this problem and, you know, life dealt me a bad hand. Yeah, but you know what? I got one of the greatest educations I could possibly get because I just wanted to find a cure for cancer, and then I had to learn about life. Well, I don't want to learn about life. I want to make money. You know, I want a nice car. I want a nice job. Those are the things that I want. No, no, no. You have to learn about life. Because if you don't learn about life, then you have to have the endurance of dealing with cancer. And I said, well, okay, can I just get rid of the cancer? Well, that's like excommunicating yourself from the church. How can you excommunicate yourself from life? You're an observer. You're in another dimension. But your dimension is part of the basic three dimensions. You cannot just go and park yourself somewhere. Well, where am I going to park myself? Well, why don't you park yourself in outer space? Well, where exactly is that? And so this becomes the fundamental problem that we have with our understanding. You cannot extricate yourself from life. You are part and parcel of life. Just because if you have an emotion that says, oh, life dealt me a bad hand. Well, maybe life dealt you a hand that can teach you better than your mentors can teach you. I'll give you a straight case in point. I grew up in the city. I thought we were the cat's ass until I got to the country to look at the stupid people in the country who were wealthy beyond my imagination, who were capable, who knew how to fix things, who knew how to deal with the weather, who knew how to raise a family and then knew how to be responsible. They had an education that I didn't have, and they knew more than I knew. The education that I had was worthless, absolutely worthless. I had no faith in the emotion of knowledge. I put all my stock in the knowledge of the social structure, the educational structure in the society. I paid the price. I paid the price for that. And so as a result, clearly, the society is worse off now than it was 50 years ago. That's indisputable. We have advanced technology, but we don't have advanced happiness. The pursuit of happiness is crashed and burned a long time ago. So we need to change the game, change the rules of the game, understand that the physical manifestation comes from the emotional predetermination. And then there's a sequencing of the emotion. And you see that all the time in our sports teams. You have the wealthy clubs get all the best players, and they will go on the field and lose to a team that has poor players, doesn't even have a good stadium, because they are emotionally charged, and the wealthy players are emotionally discharged. And so it becomes a matter of field strength. So the money doesn't dictate. The money has an effect, but it doesn't dictate. We see that in our youth. They have this feeling of entitlement. And you can't say that it's unjustified. They have everything given to them. But what do they have? They have the scraps from what we leave them. And if they're happy with that, so be it. They become what we call the passengers, right? They're not even the followers. They don't follow anything. You know, their aspiration is to have an aspiration. they're satisfied with what they have. As long as they have what they need, nothing else matters. This is a problem in our society. And it manifests itself in different extremes. So it could be just a simple argument with a neighbor, or it could be full, all-out war. And you know what? It really doesn't matter. Because in no way, shape, or form does that contribute to peace and harmony on this planet. So that power is within us. All we have to do is shift the polarity from being self-centered to being universally centered. Open, allow, yield, and receive. Don't tell the universe to shut up. The universe is feeding the emotion of knowledge to us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, unconditionally. Open, allow, yield, and receive. Become aware and have trust in that knowledge. And you will see the manifestation, and it'll happen. And we are now in that position to deliver that. We've always been in a position to deliver that, going back even 10, 15 years. But man wasn't ready. Well, now we know without a shadow of a doubt that our society is financially and morally bankrupt. So it's not working, fellas. It's not working, gang. There's a disconnect. March 24th, be a reconnect. Over to you, Mark. Thank you very much, everybody, for allowing me to present today. I hope I've made this journey a pleasant one for you today.
Great. It's just knowledge on top of knowledge on top of knowledge. I want to thank everyone for being here. Of course, upcoming this week is the One Planet, One Nation, One Race on Tuesday. Wednesday, we have the reactor group. And again, remember, if you've changed times, to sync it in with the CET times, because as I made a mistake earlier. Anyway, Wednesday for the reactor group. Thursday, again, another Knowledge Seekers workshop. Perhaps Mr. Kesh, I think he hinted about these new technologies that he was going to reveal with this. And I'm going to play this before the final disclaimer about if you could create a transformer with the C12 inside the C14 or vice versa. Maybe us in the matter state will, or created out of the physicality, as opposed to the child of Mitra created out of the energies of the soul, will be able to move back and forth rather easily, it sounds like. Perhaps with these if this is the plasma soul generator or another technology, as he said, you'll be able to move back and forth, work in New York and live in Holland, or vice versa, whatever you want. I think he was talking about, if you know how to create a transformer, to put the C12 inside the C14 and then the C14 embedded within the C12. I think he goes on to say the capabilities of the system. So maybe this is one of these unimaginables, having a device in your hand where you'll be able to do that. And I think it's coming again through these head units and the connection to lints and the tabletops and so on. But maybe there'll be something even simpler than that. I know he wants the technology available to everyone. And we're still in the development stages of it in a way, but it's coming, I think, to at least a conclusion for this stage until we get to the next step. Oh, Dean, you have your mic open. Welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Alex, for a wonderful teaching again. Thank you. I came in late, so I'm sorry I was out teaching this evening. So I come in late. So I'd just like to make Alex was speaking about the way society is going and the way that it's very deprived of certain ethics and available knowledge. So one thing I noticed that you obviously, when you reach a certain position, time, place, and position, and you understand part of the knowledge, then you interact with people and other souls that are at that level. You attract like for like. And so many of the people that I've noticed when I interact, again, it was spoken about social media, that when I first interacted, it was all the usual social media. And gradually, by introducing some messages and some of the knowledge, and just doing it in a very simplistic way, and just delivering a message, the social platform has changed. You can tell they've elevated, and many of the interactions that you see come through are completely different when I look back to the first instance that I started to interact. Now, this could be one or two things: that my soul and the soul of the knowledge is they are receiving this elevation, and it also could be that as you elevate the soul of the phone, of the social media platform. So from micro to macro, it extends out, and it grows and grows and grows.
I'd like to make a comment on that, Dean.
Please do, Alex, please do.
Yeah, well, please remember your question, because the reason I want to interject is because I was talking to, referencing when I was in a coffee shop and listening to the students talk and how silly it was, and then looking at the social platforms and to see that it's even more silly today. The difference is, in the coffee shop, it was person to person, so you knew who was making the comments. A lot of people on social media hide behind a pseudonym or a VPN or something like that, and so they tend to be extremely rude, and they didn't see anything wrong with that. I think, to your point, that a lot of people have seen through that and have made a conscious decision to be respectful, because it's very easy, to hide in anonymity and then you make a comment. I think we've all arrived to the point, and then this is the key point that I want to make. We've arrived at the point now where there's no reason to regurgitate all the maladies that we have. We know we have maladies. What we need to concentrate on is the solutions, because that is where the hunger is coming in. So I just wanted to stress that I think the people are becoming more mature in how they handle social media. And also remember, you have to remember that all the social media is being monitored. And so it behooves you to be, shall we say, more self-disciplined regardless anyway. So please carry on, Dean.
No, Alex, what you said is I totally agree with you. It is we know it's a very controlled thing. However, the people that so say control, remember we are dealing on a plasmatic condition of a soul level interaction that is above the matter state. And so you're actually, the moment they read the message and they become elevated themselves. And even if this is a bot or another system, it still has a soul, and so it's becoming elevated. And this is, as we know, is on a universal condition, and it's a creator, and everything within the system that is social media and everything else behind it, and all the thoughts and intentions, all the interactions of words, as I said, the thoughts, the actions have created this. So by putting a spanner in the works, or a beauty, I should say, as in putting some plasma in there, it takes a little while for it to start to mingle in. And then it starts to become very, how how can I say, it probably for some of it becomes very gravitational, and everything gets attracted to it. And then once they understand what it is, they become very magnetical, and it creates this space gap in the information flow of what it actually starts to do. And then it starts to trickle in to all the other souls that are involved in this interaction, and opens everything up and creates, and then this multiplies and multiplies, and then 10 to the power of thousands, and very quickly it reaches the souls that need to know the information. And once they receive this information on a soul level, they suddenly find themselves being respectful, because they become balanced. They understand on a soul level, the soul interacts, the soul of physicality then starts to be that magnetical repositioning, and it opens up, and it happens quite quickly. And so just by spreading the seed, and with the right intention and a thought and a wish, it's quite miraculous how it changes positions very quickly. And I know that certain tweets and certain interactions reach all the way up to the very top, because they have a certain field strength of knowledge, and this knowledge touches creation. And remember that everything is a creation from the creator, and we're experiencing it in the matter state. However, as we all know, we're working on a plasmatic condition of interaction. And with the thought and intention, you direct your response to an interaction, and then start to create from this. And then the first seed touches, matches up, and then recreates. And that process has started a long time ago with Mr. Kesh. And the more we do it, the more it grows, and it very quickly and very easily disrupts the system, and puts that, as I said, that spanner in the works that creates the beauty in the moment. So that was one interaction. So that's about the social media. I had a workshop this evening with about 5 or 6 people, and they had. So let me start again. So in certain positions, like in the interactions that are happening around, in say in Northern America or wherever, they not having the knowledge, they're stuck in a position of I don't like the word ignorance, but they haven't received the knowledge to understand what's happening. So when you start to resonate in a certain area, you start to get people that you attract, and they're at the same field strength. So it's not until you add that little flavor of the knowledge that then they start to elevate, and then they attract a new set of souls to interact with. So coming back, this is I'm finding that wherever I go, I'm meeting a certain level of souls that are very open and ready for the information. They have a large beauty and understanding, and then I come in and just give them some of the finishing touches to my understanding. No one higher, no one lower, but I give them a soul interaction. I give them some of the knowledge over my years with the foundation and my understanding, and I can see it in their faces, in their eyes. And I can see the elevation. There are some instances this evening where I said some things, and I felt the goosebumps and the hairs on my body raising as I spoke it, and interacted with the other souls. We connected, and I explained to them about connecting on a soul level with any time, place, and position. And the spheres and the soul elevation was tangible. You could sense and feel it in both dimensions, and it was a beautiful interaction. And so it really depends whether you're teaching like we are now, Alex, on a platform. However, I find when I have physical bodies around, and then I interact and I speak about the soul level, it seems to manifest. I find it more of a tangibility. I find it more difficult on the this platform. And I think that depends on whether you're stuck in the physicality or in soul physicality, or whether you're working on a soul level, aspect. So it's the different channels of communication, and it all works. And it's just being able to transmit and transmute, the plasma and your understanding of it, sharing it and giving it to as many as possible. And as we all know, it's our responsibility to do this once we gain this knowledge. And so I say this to them. I say to them, you receive this elevation of the soul, you understand it, and I explain the position of giving unconditionally and then receiving more back. And they understand this, and you can see, as I said earlier, you see the elevation physically in their soul, in their eyes, and then I sense it and feel it on a soul level, within the environment. And there was a couple of instances this evening where I said to them, let's go to one of the world leaders and let's join, pick one. And they picked a leader, and we, just for a very quick moment, just to give them an insight, we went to that soul and did an elevation, and they understood the power and the beauty of working on a level higher than the matter state. And once a soul receives that information, it transcends everything and transmutes into a very big understanding and elevation in that precise moment, and it's very tangible. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for listening. I think that's it. I could go on, but that was sort of what happened this evening and why I was a little bit late today coming in. So I apologize for that.
That was great, Dean. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Alex.
Now, one of the newer knowledge seekers reported they've only been around the technology for a year, but in their city, they went out and met people on the street. And he said, now we have 50 people meeting every 2 weeks in a home or a different location. So obviously the fields are changing and the conditions are changing. The fields of Mitra spreading across the planet and so on. So I think there'll be a lot more attention paid to this technology. It won't seem so abstract or foreign or not being able to be understood by many. They're hungry for this. The soul is hungry to share it with the physicality, I think.
Yeah, Mark, the moment they receive just I take myself back to when I first received some of this knowledge, and I have to reposition myself to understand that when I received it, the elevation was quite incredible. You really sensed it. And so I always try to put myself back in the position of that when I deliver the message, so that you can sense how those souls are feeling this. And it's, as Mr. Kesh said, he used to teach in, I think he said it was in Holland or Belgium, wherever. And he said that first of all, there was a few people, then it was many more people, then he packed the hall out, and then he had to, and this is the message that we carry now, is the field strength of the fields of Mr. Kesh, the field of creation. And so when we do this, we are replicating and we are touching those souls. We become that ray that touches everything. We've been touched in our thoughts and intentions and on a soul level, elevation. And then we, having been touched by that, we then touch that ray to the others, and just give them the field flow of information, of tangibility and field strength that they need to just start the process. And that happens, as I said, very quickly. And then you find it attracts more, and then it multiplies, and then it grows, and then that field strength sort of emanates from the whole of the environment, and then that cell, that seed, then gets taken and floats away somewhere else, and then out of the blue, that soul pops up. And then they get the information, and then they plant more seeds, and as we already know, this the seed of the earth is already in this position, because we are very focused, and right in this moment we know this, and we're acting as a one soul, and encompassing the other souls in this moment. So it's a wonderful thing. Thank you, Mark.
Right. And how could we, I mean, most of the people are blind to this knowledge. So how could we be critical or anything like that with them, because they've never tasted it? Our eyes are just starting to open up a little bit, but most people walking around on the street and we see them doing this or that, we have to have some sort of mercy, because their eyes, they've never been touched by this knowledge. And so very beautiful what you're doing there, Dean, even with just a few people that expand and open up, but they're blind to it. So how could we be critical of them in so many ways?
Yeah, I'm never critical, Martin, and never judge them. And that's one of the things, we all know this. There's no judgment. So you just accept how they are. You deliver, as Alex would do, you give the message, and you do it in what's the way you've understood it and what you know. And there's no intermediary. There's no you're not trying to give them a theology message, or you're not trying to make a profit.
Right. You're not trying to.
So you're delivering a beauty.
You're not trying to become a guru or anything like
Exactly. In fact, someone said something about a guru tonight, and I said, no, you are the guru. You are it. It's you, and eventually they understood this, and this particular person understood it very quickly, and then they've been through. One of the people there tonight, I realized, I was told later, had actually gone through the system, been into the flight room, and had an experience. Wow. And I was speaking, this one particular man and his partner that went in, I know they gave a lot to the system, and I think they were a big reason why the system elevated and took another position, from what I can understand. This particular person travels on a bicycle 30 kilometers from outside of Linz into Linz to go to work in the morning. Takes him 1 hour 50 minutes. Wow. And then he does a full 8-hour shift, and then cycles all the way back. And I thought, wow, that's quite incredible. You do this all the time? And then he has other things where he does meditations and things in the evening. And I said to him, I told him about putting some ganses in his tires, a particular gans. And he already does this. And I said, no, I know your little secret, why you can do what you do. So it's amazing how the connection all happens, and the souls meet in the time, place, and position that it's supposed to happen in perfect, absolute, in the moment timing. Quite incredible.
Very nice sharing.
Thank you, Mark.
You thought they were all green, huh?
Yeah, green is definitely yes, a color I've come to know.
No, I mean not exposed to the knowledge at all, and then you find out that a couple of them were actually in the system.
Yeah, I knew, I sense it, because when I look at somebody and I look in their eyes and I look at their face and I see their aura, I just sense it and feel it. I could see in this particular gentleman's structure, I just knew he was elevated, and it didn't surprise me when I received that knowledge. I think they were just curious as to me, being part of, speaking within the foundation, and then they revealed what they had, and they were very humble and very beautiful people, and it's always an honor to meet these knowledge seekers. It is an incredibly beautiful thing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Yes. Anyone else want to add anything before we close the meeting? Alex or any of the knowledge seekers here? Something you wanted to say you're holding back, or a point you wanted to bring up for discussion? Again, it's a round table. As Dean said, no one's above and no one's below. Okay, why don't we spend a few minutes more with Mr. Kesh as he talks about this transformer that, could this be the plasma soul generator perhaps that he's talking about? I know he said a couple weeks ago they were going to reveal 2 new technologies that they're in possession of, which he said would be beyond your imagination. Perhaps this knowledge of, and he said if you had the knowledge of embedding the C12 within the 14 or the 14 within the 12, and isn't this the idea of moving and transmuting or transiting between both dimensions of the physicality and the universe or the energy level? So I thought we would just spend a couple of minutes there, and then we will play Lisa's Anew tomorrow, because again, it goes into this gift from the creator in a way that all the created things will be able to do this. Again, over time, it's a process. We may be bringing it across the universe ourselves for this to happen. Again, we don't know exactly what Mr. Kesh is exactly building here. I think only he knows this, but we're all going to be a part of it in one way or another, I think. So I thought we'd spend a few minutes there hearing this in the 476 about this transformer. If you had the knowledge to embed the C14 in the C12 and vice versa, you'd be able to move back and forth from New York to Holland or Holland to New York, work in New York and live in Holland, or any place you'd like, perhaps anywhere in the universe. Again, it's so fantastic that it's beyond most people's belief. And obviously it's past our understanding, but I think the soul is quite familiar with much of this work. It's just we have to open up and allow the soul to teach us more and accept our position of being able to operate in these 2 dimensions. Anyone else want to bring a thought or a comment before we close? A little earlier than usual, but that's fine.
Hi, Mark. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say hello and thank you to all of you.
You're part of it.
And I wanted to just bring to the attention of you an observation. I mean, an observation that I have been able to confirm over and over. I would say since a few months ago, last year, end of last year, I'm a pediatrician and I work with children. And to my surprise, and also to my delight, I've been able to see kids attaining developmental milestones that I've never seen before in more than, 20, 25 years in practice. For example, I was evaluating a baby, 2 months or 3 months, infant, for a routine visit. And then I was, this is just an example to see what I observe. And then I would tell the baby, open the mouth, like, playing with them so for them to make comfortable. And this particular baby, I noticed that the baby opened the mouth. That's not a developmental milestone, the first few months of life. And then I said, okay, I went about to talk to the parents, do what I do, and I investigate routinely. And I turn back to the baby and I repeat the same command. And the baby does it. That was like the tipping point. And then after that, I've been able to observe a number of developments and advancement on what they are able to do. That is not what is in the books, is not what is in the boards of the American Academy of Pediatrics. I just wanted to comment this observation.
Interesting. And I know sometimes the mother will say that often to the child when she's trying to feed the child. I mean, with a spoon, or when they get to that age. I don't know what age they start going to a spoon, but they will say, open your mouth, won't they?
Yes, but for babies, it's more like an instinct. It's a rooting reflex that
But
they
this
lose.
is 3 months old, you're saying. Or
Yeah, this is like
amazing.
complete. Yeah, I wonder if their DNA has changed. I don't know. I wouldn't venture to say that. I mean, I'm not a scientific doctor. I'm just a community pediatrician.
yeah.
But it's something that
I think we're going to see some amazing children when they start being created from the soul first, or the energies first. Mr. Kesh said they'll have no trouble moving between the dimensions at all. We're still going to need the systems unless we can generate it ourselves. But he said we'd be the last generations to actually go through this. But the new ones, I think the children will be teaching the adults. This is what I'm understanding.
I don't remember where I listened to that, and I may be wrong, but we know that we have the carbon molecules in our DNA, in our atoms. I listened to, in a class that I was participating, one of the mentors talking about these children having silica instead of carbon. I don't know the veracity of this, if this is true or not. I just noticed the changes that I'm noticing.
Very nice observation. Thank you for sharing.
I'm sorry, Anna. What did you mean by silicone? Like exclusively without carbon?
Yes, like where they were, if that's what I understood, Mr. Alex, that, you know, the carbon molecules are the ones that we carry now into our DNA, but these kids, they carry a new element. It's not carbon, it's silica. I don't have a deep knowledge about the difference in the, you know, composition of the atomic units of our DNA molecules. I mean, we know the amino acids that are 4 basics, but that's what they're saying. They were talking specifically about indigo kids. And that was years ago. Like, you know, there is this subset of kids, like a child in the mountains of China, you know, parents that are, you know, peasants, they're just farmers, and they have never seen a computer. However, when these young kids are exposed to electronics, to a computer, they could teach the teachers how to to play with the computer. And they're called indigo kids because apparently they bring the knowledge into their DNA already. And what they were referring to is that the molecules of these kids are not bound by carbons, but silica element. That's what I recall, Mr. Mark. Alex, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm not familiar with that. Maybe someone else is.
Well, the only thing that I can comment is if they're of this planet, they are definitely carbon-based. That means organic. But the silicon-based is earthbound, very, very earthbound, because the Earth's crust is made from that. And so we refer to that as carbon-based being organic and silicon-based being inorganic. But the truth is that we also have the silica, all of us have it. So I think what we really want to emphasize here is the dependence on that particular thing. And we've seen with the studies that we can change the emotional construct of a person. And I'm not talking about things like mind control. Okay, so we can do that through the secretion of chemicals, but I'm just talking about the interaction of the fields. Because clearly, everything that's manifest on this planet in terms of the periodic table of elements stems from the basic hydrogen-carbon connection. The physicality the same. So then the question is, why does some of the minds, let's say, for instance, they're copper, and some are oil, and some are gold. And so that becomes a tendency. It's an environmental tendency to be that. So it's dependent on field strength, and it's derived from the emotion of position, and then manifests itself into the emotion of presence. And then from there, it manifests itself into the physicality. And so these children that you're talking about, they are utilizing that capability more than others. That's really all it is. Because the moment they're on this planet, there has to be a carbon connection. That's mandatory. So, you know, it's
And the
very,
calcium, right? The amino acid has to link to the calcium, doesn't it?
the calcium is the physical manifestation. Okay, but the silicone is the silicone and the carbon have a similar affinity. So we've just segregated them by saying it's organic or inorganic. Okay, and that's all that is just a scientific designation, but it really carries no meaning. When you look at the periodic table of elements, and you know, maybe that's what we should do here. Let me just pull that up. Am I still on screen share?
Yes, you're still sharing, and you're not saying silicone, you're saying silica.
Silicon. Yeah.
Silica.
It's all part of the same chemistry, but oh no, I think I've done the wrong one. No, next one. There we go. Okay, so see, what's interesting, carbon and silicon are in the same column. So there's a connection there. And if you look at nitrogen, it's 7, silicon is 14. So the silicon is a multiple thereof. So when we're looking at the creation, so we look at the, what you have to look at is the gravitational stability comes in the evenness. Which is why we're basically hexagonal. This is referring to Salamia's earlier question, the hexagonal nature of carbon. Okay, but interestingly enough, when we look at the extreme gravitational aspect of the carbon, it becomes carbonate, like a diamond structure, right? So when we're talking about the difference between the 8, which is oxygen, that's gravitational, and the hydrogen, which is 1, that's magnetical. And then when we look at the multiplication of it, so we see that the silicon is more dense. But the thing is that the silicon is even, whereas the nitrogen is odd. And so the silicon becomes far more stable in that regard. And so they've used that on the computer chips. Because it's ubiquitous, and they also use it in solar panels. So the silicon is very adept at exchanging energy, but so is the carbon. And so it's not just the medium. What I would like for you to see, you have a depth of knowledge here, which is very impressive. I'm talking to Anna. You have a depth of knowledge, it's impressive, because just the very fact that you've noticed this is huge, okay? Because it is advanced knowledge. So what is causing that? And so this is what we talked about today, the emotion of knowledge, and that knowledge is being transcended on a plasmatic basis. So we're going to say plasmatic difference from electromechanical or electromagnetic. So when we're looking at the transfer of energy within a computer or within a machine, we're talking about electromagnetic energy transfer. But when we talk about on a plasmatic basis, which is life-giving, when we're looking at carbon or we're looking at silicon, what we're looking at is energy transfer on a plasmatic basis. And so that energy transfer then comes in the form of energy packs. And these energy packs cannot be contained. They cannot be stopped. You have to provide a field for them, like a racetrack. You have to allow them, you create the pattern, you get the energy. That's the fundamental rule. And so when you have this carbon structure, you've created a pattern. And then when you have this silicon structure, you've created a pattern. But the calcium becomes the intermediary there and the anchor point. So the calcium is part of the salt solution. So on the right-hand side, we have sodium, magnesium, potassium, and calcium. These are all part of the salt solutions. And so they are the go-betweens between the magnetical and gravitational field forces. And by altering the strength of this, you can alter the affinity. That's all it is. It's so there's, within the structure, you have that capability. But that's not the only thing. You have to take more into account. And so the other thing you have to take into account is the environment. And then that's the environment, the physical environment, so the positioning on the planet, and then also the environment, the social environment that they've been brought up in. And so all of these factors come into play. And so the only difference really here is that they are able to play with their energy fields differently than others are able to play. And so this is not a position of superiority or inferiority. It's just a matter of having the skill and being able to use that skill. In essence, we all have that skill. This is the revelation, if you will, that we're all going through. And you say, well, if I have this skill, then how come I'm deficient in this? And so it boils down to this awareness and trust and understanding that what we are focusing on is that little small pie in the sky, and we're ignoring the rest of the picture. And we need to understand that the rest of the picture is we're immersed in a sea of knowledge, and the knowledge is being handed to us all the time. And then it's just a matter of us using that knowledge. And so we have to have this welcoming. That's the fundamental thing. Welcoming, and then on behalf of, okay, because you have to have a reason to have this. So now you have this understanding, and you can interpret what these children are saying. And you are witnessing proof of concept. This was a very, very important point.
Mr. Alex, I just can share with you all that this is pure joy and pure bliss. There is nothing but that on my observation.
And that's wonderful. Isn't that wonderful?
Oh, it is. It is a blessing.
Yeah. So you know, that speaks to your truth, insofar as all members of the medical community have a care and compassion for humanity. That was the initial motivation. But the reality is the opposite. So somewhere along the line, something has derailed that. You have maintained a truthfulness. And the most important thing for you to understand is that you have to be truthful to yourself. When you lie to yourself, that becomes a stupid game. And so we see so many leaders around the world are playing this game, and they're only fooling themselves really in the long run. So you are, you know, gravitating to the truthfulness of your education and your commitment. And this becomes important because now that you see this is the foundation, you can build from here. And this will help you in so many ways that you can't even imagine at this point in time. So I just want to compliment you on that. This is a very important observation. And as I say it, and I don't think I say it often enough, we have to segregate our point of view from that of physicality and from that of the plasma reality. So we have to understand that the higher strength feeds the weaker strength. So look at that, see what you're giving, see what the effect is, and that becomes the opposite, the feedback. And then that will give you the grounding that you need to maintain that gravitational stability. That's how you construct that gravitational stability, when you are confident in your knowledge and you have that proof of concept through the practical application of that knowledge. And as you are now hitting that, you're hitting that plateau. And I know how you feel when you hit that. It is bliss. It's pure bliss. So thank you for bringing that point up. I hope my explanation has helped you also.
So much
100%.
easier on your fingers too when they open their mouth rather than you trying to get the mouth open.
Yes, indeed.
Anyone else?
Yes, thank you.
May I just quickly ask,
Yes.
so when was your first interaction with the children? Was it from the very moment, or how long have you interacted on a soul level with these children?
He's a pediatrician.
Usually we start our relationship in the first week of life. Usually, you know, when they come to the medical home that you serve on. But what I noticed is like, let's say from August or for the last 6 months or so, like, how can I explain that? There is a protocol that we go through, you know, to assess a child. And many times it's part of a conversation, it's an interaction. We assess in different things. But if you see, you know, an infant that is already cooing, like singing, I joke with the kids. I said, please don't talk to me. You don't have the age to do that yet. You know, trying to communicate always, and the child responds with a developmental milestone that is completely out of his age range. I'm witnessing that. It's not one child, it's very common now. And that's what I'm referring to. But we spend a lifetime with them from first week of life until they are 21.
Okay. And so how long have you had the you know the knowledge yourself?
I've been noticing for the last, you know, 6 months, but you know, everything in life has, you know, the percentiles, you know, lower, mid, average, and then some kids are really advanced. I've seen that. I notice it all the time. Some kids are smart. But what I noticed in the last 3 months, I would say, is that this is not the occasional exception that confirms the rules of what age they do X or Y or Z things. It's coming like a popcorn popping up, like Mark was saying, that we have the popcorn. This is what my patients are doing. And I'm noticing that, you know, like babies are cooing or they are making that contact with you and interaction. Like I had a baby that, you know, in addition, I always talk to the patients since day 0, because you need to get used to my voice, and the parents need to, you know, to understand certain things. But they interact with you at a much developed and higher developmental capacities that they are supposed to. And it's like a popping popcorn. It's not the occasional child that is advanced, that is developmentally, you know, gifted. No. Everybody, I'm in the Bronx, I'm in New York. So these kids are in an environment that is what it is. So I'm seeing often. I'm seeing it more and more, and I'm bringing it to your attention because I've been dealing with this for a few months since the beginning of the year, perhaps since December. I said, what's going on? I have not listened to any news or any, new articles commenting on that. But to my experience, this is certainly happening.
May I add another comment?
Go ahead.
Sure.
So, Anna, what I found out, and perhaps you can confirm this, but when we talk about the physical maturity of a person, we kind of said it's around 28 years old. But when we talk about the mental maturity, we talk about 5 years old. And this is in contrast to how we treat children, and how we rate them and say, oh, well, they have the, they may be a 2-year-old, but they have the mental capability of a 4-year-old. In that prior early 5 years, the rate of development and the rate of intelligence acquisition is phenomenal. And it seems to peak at the age of 5. And then obviously they become extremely grounded in their physicality. And so we see those who are prodigies or gifted in the arts, they seem to excel. And so you see in those maybe ages 5 to 10, where they become very skilled. And then we find that as they become more knowledgeable with the ways of society, let's say, that talent seems to diminish. And so it can even, in fact, drop off significantly. Have you noticed that?
I have noticed, yeah, I know, that what we learn, and especially with the kids that have, conditions like the plasticity of the neurons that you're referring to is up to 6 years. So this is we have a huge opportunity to plant into the garden of the life of a child. And I know that. What I have noticed, because I have had a couple of patients that they have these exceptional capacities, like a piano player. I have one, he's in his early 20s now.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
What I noticed from them, and this is an observation that, I'm glad that you brought it up, because it was noticeable to me. He started to play piano when he was 6 or 7 without even looking at a piano. He just started playing, and he's gifted. He just got, he has a genius kind of trajectory. And when I compare him, he's from the Dominican Republic, and he had a number of financial circumstances because his parents were not musicians, not well educated, not financially well positioned. What I noticed from him when I look at him on YouTube and, the tapes that I got from him, and I compare him with a child that has perhaps the same level of giftedness or genius playing the piano, I noticed a difference that really brought my attention. My patient had what I call the financial uncertainty disposition. When I look at this child playing the piano, I saw the hesitancy of the financial insecurities of childhood in the Bronx, for example. But when I look at another child from another country, this one happened to be, I think it was from Chinese or no, he had the security that brings the social determinants of health. And that really was very obvious to me. I never knew that this could be manifested and permeate through even giftedness, and I'm sure that impacts. Of course, we tried to support him. He finally did what he needed to do financially to bridge the gap, but that certainly makes an imprint on a child's life. There is no more source of anxiety in a child that, that financial stability, in the physicality, the material things that a child needs, and also the instability of a peaceful home, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing, of course, is that we say that we're only using 15% of our brain capacity. And if that were true, then the other 85% would atrophy completely. So we are actually using the full brain capacity. And so that extends beyond the physical realm. So the other 85% has to do with the plasmatic realm. One of the things that I learned late in life is that the calcium is brain food. And so the number one compound in the brain is this calcium. And although it is very gravitational, calcium has this unique characteristic which science has difficulty explaining, and that's the difference between the solubility and the insolubility of calcium. And so we find that if it is insoluble, then it has a tendency to crust, to solidify. But when it's soluble, then it has the magic of being able to allow the brain to function in extraordinary ways. So addressing your social wherewithal comment, we have a tendency to do the same thing, whether it's an ordinary child or a prodigy, where we discount because they're so young, and they can't speak, and not the way we speak, and then we discount how we communicate with them, and we completely misfire on the possibility of teaching them in this valuable time. And so a lot of the parents, they abdicate the responsibility for teaching the child and defer that to the teachers, who really start to take over at the age of 6 or 7 when the child enters kindergarten. Now there's also preschool, but from what I've seen, they don't really teach anything in the preschool except allowing the kids to socially interact and as they say, like a dog, socialize them so that they can, so they don't be, what do you call it, disruptive and having temper tantrums and like that. We have an opportunity at that young age to teach them. And the teaching by way of the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, is the slowest way. And so what you've talked about, these prodigies, they're able to learn and transcend that. So they actually learn through a plasmatic field. And this is what's important for us to understand. Now, in my comment, just like what's happened to you, you've always had this, you just became more aware of it. And so you've been paying attention to it. The children really in that regard are no different. It's just that you are tuning into that, and it's a truly wonderful thing. So I really want to thank you for participating in this, and your comments extremely valuable. Thank you so much.
And Alenka says, Anna, your soul is expanding your senses. Your conscious is now noticing those changes. As Mr. Kesh said, the soul of the child is just as mature as the soul of the adult. There's really no difference. I think the child is feeling your love and care for it, and you have the soul connection, not with all of them perhaps, but with many of them.
I have a personal story, Mark, if I may just add, and that is, I remember as a kid, and then my grandmother was taking care of me often. And I remember quite vividly, when I was 3, 4, and 5, and I hated it when my grandmother would baby talk to me. I didn't speak baby talk to her, but she would speak baby talk to me. You know what I'm saying? So, I finally got fed up, and I said, Grandma, you got to stop talking baby talk to me. I mean, I'm 16. Anyway.
Priscilla Mamani, you have a hand up. Please join us. Tell us where you're from. Is it Italy?
No. Hello, everyone. This is my first time listening part of this talk. I'm from New York, and I was invited by my sister Ana Olivero.
Oh, okay.
Things and I'm so I'm shy because what have been talking here is new, and but is really is so I'm so interested. The thing is that I want to have the question is I don't know who was talking, it was Mr. Keshe, but someone was saying that the soul of a child is as mature as the soul of an adult. Yes. And I just want to understand that I have personal interest in these conversations. Because I have 3 children. One, the middle one, my son Omar, when he was very little, he have taught me many things, and he expressed to me something like, it was it caught my attention. And for example, he told me, with comparing himself with his friend, he asked me why my father is not a nice guy as his friend Ricky is. And yeah, it was got me like out of guard, no know what to say. I say something like, but still you can be nice or something like that. And he said, I can't, because it's something that pulls me to be like my father. And this kid, very bright, but it has been through hardship experiences. I mean, like he presented to me something that now he's 26 has impacted him, and he's like stuck in the field, the hand of his father. And also it got complicated to me. Also, I don't know if Mr. Keshe said about the calcium when a child is before 5, then after, I don't know if you understood well, solidified is when reaches maturity, or I misunderstood that. I like to understand that what the calcium have to do with the development of a human brain. I'm not knowledgeable about it. So if you can clarify that for me, that I'll appreciate it.
I'm not familiar with that. Maybe
so let me jump into that then. This is Alex. I just want to the thing about with the brain is because of the quantity of calcium that's in the brain and the type of calcium. So not the kind of calcium that we see in the bone structure. The bone structure becomes the physical manifestation of that calcium, but in order to be created as a bone, it originated as a soluble calcium. So in other words, you can take that calcium and mix it in water. And when we look at the cup of life, cup number 1, one of the components of that GANS is actually calcium carbonate. So it becomes actually a byproduct derived from the original creation of the amino acid, along with the carbon dioxide and the emotional content of the zinc and the copper. So all of these things come playing together. It's just that in the physical body, iron is a very important component with respect to the gravitational stability. Inside the brain, the calcium dominates with respect to the gravitational stability. The hardening of the calcium, that is something that happens as a result of a physical manifestation caused through a toxicity or some kind of energy binding force. And in the extreme cases, it manifests itself as arthritis. And so what you're looking at, arthritis, is this physical manifestation of calcium where it doesn't belong.
Okay.
So we're always producing calcium, and calcium is fundamental for the brain, proper brain function. But you can't eat dirt, or you can't eat concrete or calcium powder to supplement. You can't eat a calcium tablet to do that. The body produces it.
You cannot eat, so calcium tablets are not recommended?
No, because they're not water soluble. They're physical.
Okay. Because, you know, when people has mental illness and they take a medication for mental illness, they recommend calcium. I don't know why.
Well, because it's brain food.
Or perhaps that particular treatment is depleting the body of calcium.
And a tablet will be helpful in this case.
I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving any medical advice.
No,
Okay.
we're not giving medical advice, but what we are saying is that the body does create that.
Okay. And it has to be, the calcium have to be dissolved in water. I mean, water.
Yeah, but it's something that you
To
produce.
be absorbed by the brain. When you produce, your own brain produces that, that's when it benefits.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
So you can't eat calcium and get the benefit from that. That's not the way it works. Okay, because otherwise you could just eat a bag of calcium carbonate and everybody would be a genius. It doesn't work that way. So
Doesn't work that way.
No. So this is what Anna was talking about, where we have the natural innate ability for the children to utilize their knowledge, utilize their intellect. And it has nothing to do with language, and it has nothing to do with the social interaction. They're born with that. The emotion of knowledge is transcribed through the DNA in the plasmatic condition. And so it's from there that they are born. So they have this. But you're absolutely correct in understanding, and actually it was Alenka who mentioned that Anna is now having that awareness. And it's the awareness that all parents should have. They need to understand the gift that they have as a child, and then not look at that child as a piece of mechanical equipment, that you have to top up the water, change the oil, do a diaper change. So they treat it like a thing, whereas it's growing. Where we have the problem is to understand that we are born as a child. We're not born as an adult. So the whole process of growing is part of the learning experience. And it is in this learning experience that we develop the memory from our experience, which adds to this emotion of knowledge that we are born with. And it doesn't just stop. We continually keep getting fed and getting fed and getting fed. The problem from our society comes in is when we tell the universe to shut up. Say, I don't even know that you're feeding me. I don't want to know that you're feeding me. This is the way. This is what I need. I need a job. I need, a family. I need a fancy car. These are the things I need. All of this other stuff that the universe is providing. No, I don't need that. Well, this is a man-made construct. We need to open up to the universal construct, the plasmatic construct. It feeds you whether you want to be fed or not. And so all you have to do then is to stop resisting and allow the universe to open up. And then you will gain that benefit. It's automatic. So we're all having the difficulty and we're all fumbling for words trying to explain it. And the reason for it is because the universal knowledge doesn't know English or Spanish or Portuguese. That's a man-made construct. That's the point. This knowledge is a universal knowledge and we all get it, we all have it. Now it becomes a matter for us to use those skills and exercise our talent. We all have this talent. So how can we bring this out of our children? How can we let them flower, bloom like a flower in vibrant colors? So we need to encourage them.
Elias had his mic open. I don't know if that was inadvertent or he wanted to add something to the knowledge. Elias?
Thank you, Mark. Yes, hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to mention the types of materials that I'm sorry, I was just interrupted here on my desktop.
The types of materials, yes.
Yeah, the type of the materials that sometimes we're given are not really, they're usually in the matter state. So, for example, you'll get calcium and in the form of the, the oxide. You'll get magnesium in the form of the oxide, magnesium tablets. These are fine. The problem is, though, it's in the matter state. So the body cannot really absorb it very readily. It will absorb a little bit, but not really a lot. So one way to get it into the body is to attach it to an amino acid. And as soon as you do that, it becomes the GANs, basically, as Mr. Kesh has been telling us. When food enters the body, first of all, it has to be food. It cannot be just inorganic material like calcium, okay? If it's already food, it's already GANs, and then the body will be able to absorb it and take whatever it needs from it, right? However, with just calcium or magnesium oxide, it's still in the matter state. So the way to get it to absorb is to attach it to an amino acid. And the term for this is called chelation or chelation. Okay, so that's one way to increase the absorption. So I just wanted to throw that in just to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you, Elias. Anyone else want to offer anything? Again, we're not doctors, so we're technology providers in a way. So I think giving medical advice is not really in our purview, so to speak. Unless, of course, Mr. Kesh is here. As we know, he teaches doctors, even though he's not a medical doctor. He understands the body, how our body works better than most or all of the medical community put together.
If I may add one more thing, please. I was referring earlier to social baggage, and there is no need to carry the social baggage with you. When we transmute, and when we will be transmuting, you can't carry the earthbound baggage because that is a physical manifestation. So the soul is creating what it needs, and this physical baggage is not in that menu. And so this is most difficult for younger people to understand. It becomes a point where they want to sort of understand their identity and how they fit into the social scheme of things. Yeah, we all understand the pressure that we had as teenagers, and that carries over into our 20s. And the social pressure is actually quite strong. And this is reinforced with the TV, it's reinforced with the internet, and of course with the movie industry. So all around us, we are inundated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with this feedback that we get from this physical manifestation. So we have to understand that we have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, this feeding of this basic emotional understanding that is inherent to us and is inherently peaceful, and it's inherently healthy, and it's ubiquitous. And so that's all we have to do, is to open up to those possibilities and understand that we don't do that just at 6 o'clock or 12 o'clock, but we do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so don't have to go to a special place or a special building. It just becomes a part of us automatically. You don't think about it, it just is part of it. And that's the same that happens to us when we go to sleep. You know, once, if you have to think about how you go to sleep, guaranteed you're never going to go to sleep. You'll be up all night. So you have to understand that wherever you're going is in safety. You're in a safe place, you're going to another safe place, and then you'll be back. And this is important, to have the trust and the confidence in doing that. So that's the plasma reality. Thank you very much.
I think Dean wanted to come in. Dean, you opened your mic for a moment.
Thank you, Mark. I was just going to make the point that on the medical side, we're taking it from a position of what we've come to understand through the sciences and the medical professions, teachings and interactions. Mr. Kesh and many knowledge seekers have come to understand that these interactions are created from a seed that was started in a certain way that is not on a soul level. And so from the first seed, then you speak about this, you write literature, and you go off on this tangent, and then you grow other cycles of creation from it. And the first seed was wrong. So all the other aspects of it have grown from this. When you go back to the origin, the seed, and you go back to the soul interaction of creation, which is what the ethos and the understanding of plasma is, then you start to realize that the doctors and yourselves are the seed. Your soul, your plasma, your interaction in the matter state of your physicality, the healing is you, not the literature, not the all the teachings. Your soul has guided you, brought you into a position, and you are a healer. You have a soul that will naturally give to another unconditionally. When you tap into that energy, you can create a condition where you can bring a balanced position to another soul very quickly, by you being the creator in that moment. And when you do that, you connect yourself, your soul, with your patients, then you will find very quickly you will create a beauty, and you won't need all the other interactions. I know this sounds difficult. However, once you start to practice it and you start to really create from your soul, so give unconditionally from your soul to your patient, you will find that you will create a beauty that will elevate them and will bring them to balance very quickly. And it is an elevation that once you do it and you elevate yourself first, so give unconditionally to yourself, elevate yourself through touching the plasma and the knowledge, and then you pass this elevation on to the next soul. And you will find that all the medical books and everything will very quickly disappear. That's just my thoughts anyway. That's from my understanding and the interactions that we all have as knowledge seekers. And once you understand that you really are the presence of the creation, and you can give to another soul, then you elevate and heal. And I don't want to be, I'm not claiming to be miracle workers or anything else. This is an interaction on a soul level that brings about a balance and will create, not just for one, but for the whole of humanity, a condition of bring the physicality back to a beautiful position of balance from all the emotions that have caused all the diseases through the environment and the structure of social conditioning and everything else that we've come to experience as a soul. And all souls are equal. And as it's been spoken, you know, many souls come in with the same ability as an adult. So that soul is mature. So if you give unconditionally from your soul, you're just passing, it's an energy transfer. And once you understand this energy transfer, all the tools in the world are you. You are the creation, you are the creator, and you can, just by giving from your soul, which is everything, you create a beauty. And when you understand this, as I said, many of the interactions in the medical profession will gradually start to take another position. We have the tools within the units that Mr. Kesh has brought forward, and the enhancement units and everything else. They create a condition to elevate the soul. When you reach that elevation, and then you can touch another soul with a thought, with an interaction in the moment. And the moment that you do this and you touch the soul, then you bring it to balance. And remember that you are the beauty, you yourself. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Go right ahead. Am I saying your name correctly? Fresia?
Fresia, yes. Thank you so much. Just wanna, so what I just heard, it calls my attention. So how do I elevate my soul to help? I'm not a doctor, but I'm a mom. And I have this, concerned very much. How do I elevate my soul to help my child who has said, one day he said, and he's an adult, my soul died today. And it has been a roller coaster. It's been very difficult. It's complex. My son had 2 concussions that was never taken care of at a younger age when he was in high school. One was in the sophomore year, and then the other one was at the senior year. And since then, he performed more or less. We thought, well, I mean, he has a problem, but it's been very difficult, and it's been like different medical conditions of depression, anxiety, when the brain's chemicals are not working right, and sometimes no clarity. And listening about if we can heal, and if we heal ourselves, if we elevate our soul, but also we can help another people, another person to heal. But I just wondering, is maybe I'm very ambitious to know that today when I just first time listening part of these conversations. So how do I do that?
Can I answer that? So with a thought, you're the mother of your you said your son, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So you have a very direct connection with your sibling, with your son, a very direct connection that is always there, always going to be a very strong connection. So you can ask the soul of your son. So you're not touching the physicality. You're not touching.
Yes.
There's a soul of physicality, and there's a soul which is in the brain, and this is a soul that is placed within your son when he was in your womb. And so you are touching this soul. So just by a thought of asking if your son would like to receive the energy from you, and just give unconditionally as a mother does to her son, and just with a thought, just do this. So forget the physical body of your son. You go to the soul and you say, I give unconditionally from my soul. It will be, if your son soul accepts this, then the soul will be elevated. And it's just a very quick thought, a connection. And when you do this as a mother, as another soul, so you could be the mother of any child on the planet, humanity. They're all souls. You have a beautiful direct link with your sibling, your son. However, when we as humanity are able to do this with all the children of humanity, then humanity will elevate. When we have no borders, when we can give from one child, whether they are black or white, in Africa, America, England, Germany, Austria, wherever, when we can do this to all the children of humanity, unconditionally give with a direct connection, a thought, and each child becomes your child, then humanity will elevate.
Thank you. I feel that way. That's how I always have felt. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for beautiful questions. Thank you for your beautiful soul. Wonderful.
And of course, to elevate your own soul, that's done through giving. Find something to serve and not something that serves you. But as Dean said, it's unconditional giving. And the soul has to be willing to accept. We don't force any soul. As Mr. Kesh said, we're not bullies, and we're not dragging somebody by the hand. The soul is sacrosanct in a way, and it has to want to receive, but that doesn't stop you from giving. And in this giving process, you receive more so you can give more, but on the soul level, not in the matter state.
Yes. Thank you so very much. I understand it.
We're all learning. We're all learning. Anything else anyone would like to add? Thank you very much for sharing, Precia. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's really an honor. I mean, I'm being very humble for being
beautiful.
Accepted even to listen my comments. Thanks. Thank you very much.
No one's higher and no one's lower, as Dean likes to say.
Yes, 100%. It's so wonderful to hear beautiful souls coming forward and elevating themselves and understanding what it really is, and then giving to another soul. And very quickly, the plasma transmutes, elevates, touches the matter state of our physicalities, And then in essence, we're transmuting in zero-time communication with your thought to the soul of your son and the soul of the sun. So interaction of the sun with the earth gives us the face of the man. And so from the smallest cell atom in your body to a universe is all the same process. So we can transmute and connect with any point, time, place, and position that we focus and choose to, and we can elevate and give to other souls. And it's a thought and an intention. And once you achieve that intention, you can give unconditionally and receive. As you give more, you receive more, and the elevation for yourself and your son will then transform and transmute the physicality, the body, to elevate as well.
I just want to ask if I could be invited again, please.
You're always
invited.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mark.
Yes, I'm just going to play this few-minute clip here from Mr. Kesh. He mentioned in the 474th Knowledge Seekers Workshop how in the future, he said, I'll teach you to create C14 and back to C12. He said the units will change in the next few weeks. Again, this is 2 workshops ago. We have Soul Generator to elevate, to interact with other souls. Many will raise the dead. No illness and no ill intentions. He said this knowledge is a gift of 1,000 years or thousands of years. He called it a plasma soul generator. This should make you more humble, he said. It generates nothing but fields of the soul of the creator. In the next few weeks, we show you system. We bring change to humanity, man to mature, that nobody can fool you in space. He said 1 unit already exists on this planet for you to mature.